Good. We're live.
Live.
We're coming at you. What was it? You are looking live, as Brent Musburger used to say, at the Play Like a Jet, jetsinsider.com joint draft night stream. I am Scott Mason of Play Like a Jet. To the right of your screen, or at least the right of my screen, is the very big deal, who is the owner, the operator, the lead reporter, the whole shebang over at jetsinsider.com, Chris Nimbley. Rare on camera appearance for him. Chris
Whew.
is going to join me for the duration of at least up until when the Jets pick at number 16. We'll see if anything gets frisky. Otherwise, he might bail after that. But we're going to have some fun talking about what's going on before the draft as we lead into 8 o'clock when Fernando Mendoza comes off the board and the real fun begins. And Chris, right now, and I mentioned this to you yesterday, you've been covering the Jets for over 15 years. You've been covering the NFL for about the same amount of time because I don't know, do you consider the Jets the NFL? But
I mean,
essentially, what we've seen with Arvell Reese and David Bailey at number 2 is the most insane thing I've ever seen. Where now, granted, it's a relatively new phenomenon that people are betting on draft picks, but it seems like multiple times per day, people are shifting the odds in favor of one or the other. And today, I've seen it shift a couple of times, and you've seen the most of the national guys saying that they believe it's going to be David Bailey. You've seen most of the local guys. Now, Rich Cimini is an exception to this, but most of the local guys are saying they think it'll be Arvell Reese. You've said you think it's going to be Arvell Reese.
sticking with it.
Whatever the result ends up being here, and especially if it is Arvell Reese, because when you look at all the huge names that have gotten in on this and have said that they're Daniel Jeremiah said he thinks it's 95% that it's David Bailey, for example. If they were fooled, if it's Reese and they were fooled to that extent, then what that tells you is that the Jets were very tight-lipped and they were very good at misdirecting in a way that I don't remember seeing the Jets being this good at anything close to this in the past. I know we've talked about other regimes trying to keep a tight lid, but if it does wind up being Arvell Reese and all these huge names in the business that get paid to do this for a living and specifically report on the draft, if they are all saying one thing and it winds up being something else, that's a master class right there, no matter how you slice it.
Yeah. All right. First thing I'll start with is number one. Absolutely, you're correct. But the caveat to that is every team in the league has gotten better at this. They've gotten better at not leaking, and if they do leak, it's with purpose. They've gotten better at playing the smoke game, doing all that stuff. So it's harder. The game's changed, right? The game is constantly changing. Football. That's part of what I love about football so much is it's a cyclical game. It's always changing. You know, back growing up, it was just running back. That's all that mattered. And then it was 5-10 years ago, running backs didn't matter. Now running backs matter again, right? This type of stuff always happens. Football is always changing. It's not. There's just not one thing that you can go with. And covering the sport is the same. You covering the draft specifically, you used to be able to rely a lot on the scouts in the building. And then, now the way that teams have it, there's area scouts that do their report, turn it in, and then they have no clue what's going on in the war room. I can go and I can talk to scouts that work for the Jets and get their input and feelings on how they feel about players. And they'll be like, I don't know how everybody else feels. I'm not in. I turn my report in, and that's it. I'm not in those meetings. Now there's other scouts that are in those meetings. But you used to be able to go directly to team sources a little bit more. It's harder and harder to do that. And so what you have to do now is a lot more reading the tea leaves. You listen to Dane Brugler talk about this all the time. He says, if I want to know what the Bucks are doing, I'm not asking anybody what the Bucks are doing. I'm going around and I'm asking other teams, what do you think the Bucks are looking at here? What do you think they're doing here? He's asking, league sources. What are you hearing? He's asking other coaches. He's asking college staffs. Like, who's sniffing around here? Like
Right.
that's a huge one that people aren't talking about. They're like, the college people know who's checking on what players, and that okay. Who shows up for a pro day means nothing, right? Like, we talk about this all the time. They use pro days as smoke screen. And especially if you're going to a big enough school, you go to Indiana this year or Ohio State. Okay, great. You're at a pro day. They got 13 players who are going to get drafted. You could be looking at any one of them. So there's all of that you have to factor in. And then we were talking beforehand, then there's also the very real possibility that the Jets are just go to reporters and just, hey, we're not going to take David Bailey, but I want you to go and tell the world that we're going to take David Bailey. And yes, I am using you here. The Jets, there are situations where they will be upfront with reporters and say, we're going to use you here. We're going to cut a deal, and we're going to use you here. You go spread the good word for us. And then when time comes back around, we will give you some breaking news. And now, obviously, you got 10 different people running with the same story, so they're going to have to divvy out that news in some way if that's the way they choose to do it. So there's all different types of things that are going, and then there's the, sometimes, like, I have a friend who used to tell, like, white lies, a lie about every little thing, and another friend would be like, in some ways he's like the most honest relationship I have, because I just always expect him to be lying to me.
You're right.
So, like, I just, everything he says, I expect it to be a lie. So
remember when Dave Chappelle called it? He said an honest liar.
Yeah.
Like, he's totally full of it, but he's almost honest about the fact that he's totally full of it.
And that so much that you can tell that what they're doing, why they're doing it. And there's certain people that I've over 15 years I've talked to, and I'm like, all right, you're not just talking to me right now. Like, I can tell there's something in you're trying to steer in a certain direction. You're trying to do something. So it's just it's weighing stuff and being like, all right, I trust this person is going to tell me something towards their benefit. And then there's other people, I tell you this all the time, I'm not out here breaking big scoops. I don't work for ESPN. The people I talk to aren't worried about me, like, hanging up the phone and going and releasing information. I'm not Peter Schrager. Like, that I could start a new Twitter account and come out, and people aren't going to really react to it. I'm not changing markets. I can come out and say they're taking Arvell Reese. No betting line is changing because of that. So the people I talk to are all like, yeah, I'm not concerned about that. And that's part of my thing too, is I slow play things a lot in this. I withhold more information than there's a lot more I can usually tell, but I'm like, I'm just gonna wait, because if I hold on to stuff and keep it a little more, then people are gonna trust me to not spill it later. That's
when I get the text from you where it says, you can't tell anybody this, but ...
and if I talked to you about this too. Ali Connolly does the read optional with John Ledyard, but part of the reason why I love this podcast so much is because I can tell when he is breaking news, and he doesn't do it. Like, he doesn't actually, like, say it like it's news. He presents it as like, I just had this thought that maybe this could happen here. Boom. Right. And it spills out. But, like, no, because that's exactly how I do it. That's exactly how other reporters drop little nuggets in here to, like, we will drop information in the middle of, it sounds like we're just spitballing. And then sometimes it just, you mix it in there. So yeah, that's all part of it. And it's just having to read between the lines and knowing who, okay, this person's telling me this. Why are they telling me this? And being able to kind of try to go back and forth and figure it out. And then this whole time we've been talking about the Arvell race, the biggest reason why I've remained steadfast, we've talked about this, Scott, the explanation.
Yeah.
Every time they give an explanation for why it's going to be David Bailey, it doesn't make sense at all. 2 + 2 does not equal 4 in this equation. All off season long, all we've heard about and it's backed up by the fact that they traded away Quinnen Williams and Sauce in the season. They're geared up to prepare for 2027. It's all about 2027. Aaron Glenn wants to be more multiple. He wants to find a chess piece to move around on the board. Everything we were hearing 3 months ago leads directly toward Arvell Reese, and only Arvell Reese. There's no other path you could get to that wasn't Arvell Reese from what you're hearing that far out and what we were all hearing that far out. Then you start hearing, oh, they just want the instant pass production? What? So now all of a sudden, this team that's picking second overall and won 2 games, has all these draft picks this year and next year. Now all of a sudden, they're most concerned about getting a player, their production for this year, for 2026. That doesn't compute. That doesn't make sense. Also, stop telling me David Bailey is this safe pick. Of all the people in the top 10, David Bailey is up there, if not the highest bust possibility. It's right up there. And the biggest reason for this is, to me, his first step is incredible. There's no question about that. Both of them weigh about the same. Reese and Bailey weigh the same. Reese has way more to put on his frame, in my opinion. Also, Bailey, the more he puts on, the slower he gets down. I am very concerned about Bailey against the run. And we can debate about long-term, how does he project? I'm willing to say, okay, he can be fine against the run long-term. But immediately, can he play the run immediately? Can you get him on the field now? And if you're saying, all right, we'll just get him in 3rd and 7 situations, what happens when you play the Lions on 3rd and 7? And the Lions say, you know what, we're going to run the ball on 3rd and 7. And you got Will McDonald and David Bailey as your 2 defensive ends right now. And I can run at either one of them. And now all of a sudden that 3rd and 7 turns into 4th and 1. Or they break a big play on you. And now you're having trouble getting your number 2 pick on the field. And then there's the fact of this: David Bailey, older player, Arvell Reese, 20 years old. He wasn't an edge. He wasn't rushing the passer. And now listen, I am not a Matt Patricia fan. When you're talking about NFL defensive coordinators, I'm going to hate on Matt Patricia. But when the Super Bowl champion defensive coordinator comes in and takes a look at this guy and says, who's this 20-year-old? Why aren't we having him rush the passer? Let's have him do some of that. And then you see flashes everywhere because he's that awesome at it at 20 years old, and people are getting super excited. Give me that guy. Give me that guy over the guy that has the electric first step, but I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get on the field because he's not going to be able to hold up against the run, at least not right away. I texted you about, I forget who it was, their explanation. I was like, it feels like they're looking at the map and they have the right directions, but they're reading the map wrong. That's what I said. I forget who it was that said it. The explanation, I was like, it feels like they're trying to read the tea leaves and they're reading it wrong, at least from how I'm reading it. Now, maybe I'm reading it wrong. I doubt it, though, because it just doesn't make sense. Anything else doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's where I've come down on it, Chris. I think really what's happening here is that everybody's trying to connect dots. And I don't think any of this stuff is coming from the Jets. I think it's from league sources. In fact, when Rich Cimini put out his report today, he said that he had spoken to 3 league sources and they all believed the Jets were going with Bailey. I think they're trying to read tea leaves, but I don't think they're reading them right. And like you said, it's a logic. You got to follow the logical path here. And what it comes down to for me is David Bailey. I think his run defense is better than you do, and I think he could play a little bit of run defense to begin with, but he is going to have to come off the field a fair amount of time, especially early on. And yeah, he's the more polished pass rusher at this point. You'd expect him to be, considering that he's been a full time pass rusher off the edge. But the thing with the Jets is that you've heard Aaron Glenn talk many times about how it's all about the long term. Like you said, they trade for picks in 2027. You've heard him talk about how they're looking for versatile chess pieces, how they want to run multiple fronts. All of that really seems to point toward Reese. And then you heard about how they were embarrassed about how they couldn't stop the run. And I know they added a bunch of guys in the offseason, but still to add a guy that has a weak spot and that weak spot is being able to stop the run seems a little out of pocket for what you would think the Jets are looking for at this point. And when you then go ahead and go to the next part of this, which is, do you have David Bailey as a top tier edge rusher? So is he a Miles Garrett prospect? Is he a Nick Bosa prospect? Is he a Von Miller prospect? I don't think he is. I mean, his bend is questionable. Like we said, his run defense is not great. I think it's okay, but that's probably all it's ever going to be. He's kind of stiff. And he's one of these guys where he wins because of the speed and because of that first step. When he can't beat you quick, a lot of times he has some trouble. And against tackles in the NFL, he's going to run into trouble more certainly than he did at Texas Tech or at Stanford. So the only way that this makes sense to me is if the Jets have looked at Arvell Reese and they have determined that they don't believe that there's a world where he becomes a quality pass rusher. If they think he's strictly an off ball linebacker and that's all he'll ever be, then I could understand picking Bailey because then the choice is, well, do you want the pass rusher or do you want the off ball linebacker? But if they think Reese can be a pass rusher who does other things or a really good all purpose guy who can get to the quarterback a lot, then to me it's a different conversation, especially when you're talking about Reese being 20 years old, an athletic freak of nature. Look at his play strength. You look at his tape, you see him shoving around guys 100 pounds heavier than him. He's only going to get stronger. He's only going to get fill out more. His potential is only going to continue to be realized. Remember, as Dave Hellman from the Athletic Football Show said, and you and I like that show a lot, Arvell Reese can't even legally drink yet, and look at what he's doing. So I think when you look at that, if David Bailey was that tier one edge prospect, then I think this is a different conversation. But I don't think that he is. I don't think the Jets will think that he is. Now maybe they do, and maybe we're wrong, and they're going to go with Bailey. But I'm going not only with the stuff that you've said and a couple of others, but also just like I said, my own intuition and common sense. It just wouldn't make a lot of sense if the Jets were to go in the direction of Bailey, as far as I can tell. By the way, we're joined by a special guest who is live at Florham Park right now. If he can hear me, go ahead and unmute your camera and unmute your microphone. But Nick Faria is at Florham Park right now. He's going to be there for when the Jets make the pick. So it's good that he could come in a little bit, give his perspective, and then he'll come back after the Jets make the pick and go over it with us. Nick, I want to get you in on this because Chris and I just talked a lot about the big story here right now, which is if you're a Patriots fan, obviously not the same as it is for the Jets right now with the Patriots. There's a lot of other stuff going on. But the decision at number 2, you and I have talked about this a lot too, and you seem to be in the same camp that Chris and I are in, which is that the Jets are more likely than not to take Arvell Reese. We've gone through our reasons for why we think that's the case. And we also said that you have to give Darren Muji and Aaron Glenn a lot of credit here if it does end up being Arvell Reese and they were able to fool this many people around the league and this many of the major insiders that have been very adamant. In fact, as I said, Daniel Jeremiah yesterday said 95% sure that the Jets were going with David Bailey. But me, Chris, you, guys like Connor Hughes, Zach Rosenblatt, Antoine Staley, a lot of the local beat reporters, not that I'm on the beat, but you get what I'm saying. I cover the team as well in a different way. We've all been saying Arvell Reese. Explain to me why you think it's Arvell Reese, and give me your rationale for why you think people are getting it wrong.
Yeah, I'll sit there and say this, and I'm going to try to be quiet because I know other people are working. It's a busy day here at the facility.
Yeah,
But the one thing I will say, probably the biggest reason, when Aaron Glenn talked about the kind of defense he wants to run, he talked about a multiple defense, having guys play all over the field. He wants his linebackers able to rush the passer, his edge rushers being able to drop back into coverage. God forbid that be the case, and you need a player that's versatile like that. You need someone who can be able to set the edge in the run while also crashing the pocket internally and outside. That's Arvell Reese in a nutshell. And you look at the overall the metric grades that he had at Ohio State, his pressure rate was off the charts. He was a really good pass rusher when he was given the opportunity to do that. So I think you put it all together, what Aaron Glenn wants to do on defense, it just fits with Arvell Reese more than it does with David Bailey. And again, I've been kind of that one person that's like, listen, I think it's going to be Arvell Reese, but I don't necessarily think that David Bailey is a bad pick at 2 either. Uh,
sure.
I think he's a perfectly. You need edge rushers. They were dead last in the league in sacks last year, dead last in the league in pressure rates. They need someone to come in and change life at this position. I think both players can do it. But when we talk about the upside, when we talk about the overall fit for what this defense needs to be, it's Arvell Reese to me, and it hasn't really been close for a few months.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that I'm in agreement with you as well about David Bailey. I like him as a player. I think he's going to be a good player. I just think Reese is the superior prospect and he's the better fit for what the Jets are doing. But I also think more importantly, 20 years old, the Jets are in this for the long haul. And as I said to Eric Edholm over at NFL.com when he was on the show this week, the rationale, and he agreed with me on this when I brought it up, the rationale that you're hearing of Aaron Glenn's on the hot seat, he needs somebody that can help him now and all that. I'm not buying that, and here's why. Even if that were the case, Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji have to know that unless David Bailey has a historically good rookie year, the difference between him and Arvell Reese year number 1 is not going to be enough to determine whether or not this regime keeps their jobs. What is David Bailey worth, even if he has a really good rookie season? 1 extra win, maybe? That's not going to make the difference between whether or not Glenn and Muji keep their jobs. So I think that rationale has never made a lot of sense to me. Like I was saying to Chris, and I want to get your thoughts on this too, Nick. The way I look at it is the only way that it makes sense to me, based on all the things you were just saying, for the Jets to take David Bailey at number 2 is if they look at Arvell Reese and they say, you know what, very talented player, sky's the limit for him, but we just don't see it at edge rusher. We don't think he's going to be that dynamic pass rusher. We see him as an off-ball linebacker. Maybe we could occasionally have him rush the passer, but he's really going to be more of an off-ball linebacker. And we'd rather go with the guy that we think could be a double-digit sack guy. We want the pass rusher, and we don't think Reese is going to be able to get there. If that's why, if they pick Bailey and that's why, then I could sort of wrap my head around it. But any other explanation, if the explanation is we think Bailey offers more quicker, that doesn't jive because, as we talked about before, the Jets have traded for first round picks in the 2027 draft. Everybody's talked about how everything is geared towards 2027. If this regime was making decisions purely based on that, then they wouldn't have made moves like that. And also, like I said, how much of a difference does David Bailey make year 1 as opposed to Reese? Even if Reese only has an Abdul Carter kind of rookie season, unless David Bailey has a rookie season where it's 14, 15 sacks, I just don't see that it's going to make the difference between AG and Muji staying and AG and Muji going. They're either going to start to turn this around and there will be they'll see light at the end of the tunnel and they'll stick around, or it'll go really badly and they won't be here. But I don't think Bailey's going to be the determining factor, or Reese in 2026 anyway. So I want to hear what you think about that, because it seems like we are hearing a lot of this stuff from the national media and it doesn't really make any sense. I also want to point out really quickly before we go to you, Nick, 2 things. Number 1, we are not going to spoil the picks tonight. So even if they're on Twitter or whatever else, We will not be saying them until they're announced on TV. We will not talk about them until they're announced on TV. Number two, super chats are open. So if you're in the room and you like what we're doing, please throw us some super chats. We're happy to answer your questions, and we're happy to talk about whatever you want to talk about. But with that, Nick, I want to hear your thoughts on what I just mentioned.
Yeah, I'll sit here and give you a hot take. Ready? I think if we talk about the more impactful player, I think there's an argument to be made that whoever the Jets take at 16, and the expectation is that he will be a receiver, whether it's a trade up, a trade down, or they stay at 16 and take a receiver. I think the argument is that player is more impactful to wins right away than the player at 2, simply because the Jets are desperate for offense. They need someone to produce on the offensive end as at the receiver position to work with Garrett Wilson. Now, I still think the expectation has to be that these guys have to produce right away, whether it's Reese, whether it's Bailey. But from a purely production standpoint, this receiver that's going to come in, as I expect, and I think most people expect, this guy's going to come in, produce quality, yardage, quality catches, quality touchdowns. That is going to be just as impactful to me, especially going into this season, because they just were so bad passing the football last year. And Garrett Wilson coming back healthy is certainly going to fix that. But you need that additional weapon on the outside. So the way that I see this, they need to come away with impactful players regardless of what happens. And it's got to be both. It's got to be at 2, which I think, again, will be Reese, but then also it will be at 16 as well as a receiver. And I'm still on the table that I think they could trade up. I think there is a path here for the Jets to be able to come in and say, Washington, Kansas City, these teams need draft picks. You could look at Cleveland as well. They may not be sold on a top prospect. These teams that are outside of 5 that may want to get more draft picks, that the Jets could go in and say, listen, we'll trade up. We're going to get Carnell Tate. We're going to get Jordan Tyson, and we're going to come away with the best non-quarterback in this draft and the best receiver in this draft. Now, if the Jets come away with that, I think most Jet fans should throw a very large party tonight, because that would be a fantastic draft day.
Really quickly, before I go to Chris, I got to give credit to Paulie Koski, who in the comments said, Bailey's uncle owns JetBlue. For those that remember that reference, that cracked me up. I don't know if anybody recalls, but if you weren't around in 2021, there was this really insane conspiracy theory that because David Nealman, who was the founder of JetBlue, who also follows me on Twitter, so David, if you're watching this by any chance, I know you're not with JetBlue anymore, but I know that you also have connections. So if you want to get me some free flights or something, let me know. But the theory was that David Nealman, who is Zach Wilson's uncle, because he was the founder of JetBlue and JetBlue was a sponsor of the Jets, that Woody Johnson pressured Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas into drafting Zach Wilson, which, of course, was the most insane conspiracy theory that I've heard, and I've heard a lot of them over the years as it pertains to the Jets. So that was a good one from Paulie. Thank you for that. That made me chuckle. But I want to talk about this, Chris, a little bit. Nick brought up the idea of trading up, and I think you and I disagree with that concept. Now, I'm sort of in the middle on this. And what I mean is, if the Jets have intel, let's say they like Mekhi Lemon a lot, and they think Lemon is going to go 13, 14, whatever, and they want to move up a few spots, maybe trade that number 140 pick, the end of the 4th round, to make sure they get the guy they want, then I'm okay with it. What I would not do is make a very bold trade up, give up a 2nd rounder, a 4th, whatever it's going to take, to go up and get a Carnell Tate or Jordan Tyson. And the reason is because for different reasons, I don't see those guys as wide receiver ones. I don't see them as the type of player you make a move like that for. Now, if we're talking Mike Evans is in this draft, or we're talking Julio Jones or somebody like that, or Jamar Chase, or give me any number of really good wide receivers that were picked near the top, Calvin Johnson, obviously, although that was a whole other level, then fine, I could see it. But Carnell Tate, I think, is a very good wide receiver. I don't think he's a great wide receiver. He's not a wide receiver. He's not the top wide receiver in almost any class. I think with the 2nd and 4th round pick you'd probably have to use, you could get at least 1 extra starter, maybe 2. And in a draft like this, I think it's a quantity over quality draft. Jordan Tyson would scare the daylights out of me because of the medical. the ACL, the MCL, the PCL, all in the same name. You've got the hamstring injury. You've got the collarbone. You've got Chris doing the robot. I don't know what that exactly
Tiny
he's trying to do.
arms. He's got the tier. He's got 11 inch. Or
He does.
it's like
Yeah, that's true.
11 percentile arms.
He's got
They're
the Ruben
tiny.
Bain
That's for a
arms.
receiver. That's a
Yeah.
problem.
No, I agree. So that's where I come down. I'm okay with a slight trade up, and I would be fine with trading down, obviously. I'm okay with a slight trade up, but I wouldn't make a bold move up. To me, Carnell Tate, and I told you this, Chris, people are going to get mad when I say this, and I want people to understand. I think Tate is going to have a better NFL career than this guy, but I'm saying he profiles very similarly to him and reminds me quite a bit of what he was like when he came out of college. Now, this guy didn't have as good of hands as Carnell Tate, but he was also a little bit bigger. And that guy is Corey Davis. If you remember, Corey Davis went 5th in the draft. He profiled size and speed and height and all that wise very closely to Carnell Tate. And I think Carnell Tate could be a reliable 1,000-ish yard receiver year in, year out. But I also think that you could probably get that from quite a few of the receivers in this draft. I don't know that he's a huge difference from, say, Mekhi Lemon or even Omar Cooper or somebody like that. I actually like Jeremy Bernard a lot, who might be available in the second round. So that's where I'm coming from. What do you think, Chris? I know that you've been very anti. I sort of am in the middle of you and Nick. I'd be okay with a slight trade up. I wouldn't want a big swing to go up.
Guys,
Where are you?
I gotta jump.
Yeah, Nick, we'll talk to you after the pick. Thanks for jumping in with us, brother.
Of course.
All right.
So we heard from Nick. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll start with the Tate part of this. Just it's the same thing as Bailey, right? It's the same exact conversation here. Like this draft, we've all talked about it. This boring draft, blah blah blah. This is not a great draft. It's because the best players don't play the premium positions.
Right,
and
right.
It may be Arvell, but Arvell, that's the issue here. Caleb Downs, awesome. Jeremiah Love, awesome. There's a lot of these players that are awesome. Even Fernando Mendoza is, and this year he's a don't overthink it. You're just taking him number one. Don't overthink it. Take him. But if you stack him up, he's going to be behind Cam Ward. He's definitely behind Caleb Williams and Drake May and Jaden Daniels if they're all in the same draft. You talked about it, Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett, David Bailey does not stack up in there. And the same thing with Carnell Tate and these receivers. Now, we've been talking about this, and I'm adamant on I wouldn't trade up for any of these receivers. Yeah. One thing for me to say that based off my opinion on these receivers, if the Jets show me their draft board and one of their guys is graded 10, points higher than the other guy, then okay, I'll understand why they would want to package and trade up for him. And that I could get that. But how I'm looking at it, there's 5 guys, and I'm excluding Jordan Tyson from this conversation. There's 5 guys that it's different flavors. Every year I talk about this receivers, different flavors, taste buds. Concepcion is my number 2 receiver specific for the Jets because I want someone to stretch the field.
You know what concerns me a little bit about Concepcion though, Chris?
Yeah.
His name is Kevin Concepcion, and that's where the KC comes from. So it's Kevin KC Concepcion. It doesn't make sense.
Like
and
machine.
I wonder if that's
an ATM machine. It's like but it's
the
opposite of that.
Or the WCW, when Bret Hart used to say the WCW when WCW stood for World Championship Wrestling. That didn't make any sense either. So I do wonder a little bit about that. It's the same thing that I always talked about with Will Levis. Can you trust a guy that drinks mayonnaise straight out of the jar? So there's something to think about. But I do like Concepcion as a player.
But like the reason why I brought that up specifically is I like Mekhi Lemon. I love Mekhi Lemon. And for other teams, I can understand loving Mekhi Lemon. For me, my preference, I'd want someone who could stretch the field more, the speed, the vertical. to pair with Garrett Wilson, or even the Denzel Boston plant on the outside. But that's what I'm saying. That's my taste bud, my flavor. And in my head, I'm looking at it. I'm like, I'm not trading anything to move up because I'm comfortable with any of those guys. One of those guys is falling to me. And in fact, I'll take it a step further. I'm hoping somebody else is available. If I'm the Jets, I'm hoping it's not a receiver that I like at 16. I don't know who it is. I highly doubt Vega's going to be there. But maybe they go that direction. Maybe there's a cornerback they like, or Thieneman or something like that. I'm thinking that, and I'm hoping maybe Denzel Boston or somebody is there at 33, or maybe after. I'd be closer to leaning towards that than I would be to forcing a wide receiver at 16, let alone trading up for a wide receiver. But again, if I see the Jets board and they're like, yeah, we got Tate way graded, okay, then I can get on board with that plan. But I just, it doesn't make sense to me when I see it. It's just different flavors, and all these guys, including Mekhi Lemon, would fit really well with Garrett Wilson. It's not like I've talked about it. I'm like, I don't love the pairing of those two ideally, but also they fit really well in lots of ways. So that just he's not the field stretcher. That's what I want more. But I get it, so I'm on board, and that's why I'm like, yeah, I'm not trading up. And you did all this work to collect all these picks, you know? Let's wait until next year to start packing them and move up for the players.
Well, like I said, Chris, a small trade up where you're giving up like the 140th pick or something. If there's a receiver or whatever that you really like, I'm okay with that.
The biggest. Sorry to interrupt, but the only part there is the no third rounder. And I know that they would love to trade out a 33 or 44 and get a third rounder.
Right.
So now if you're talking about, all right, you're packaging a fourth rounder, it's going to be that, you know what I mean? Like that. We're straying farther away from getting to the third. Now we're giving up fourth. So
I'm talking about 140, not 103. 140 is the pick that's the last pick in the fourth round. The 103 pick I wouldn't do. But I think, look, if you could use that 140th pick to either move up a couple spots if there's a specific receiver you like, or early, or there's one that you want to move up from 33 to get, I'm okay with that. They could also trade back, and that's fine. I think a lot of this comes down to, my friend Chris Walker talks about this a lot. You got to do the smart business play and play the board. You sit there at 16 and you see how it shakes out. You see what your intel is telling you about how things are moving. And again, we did on Sharman and Chris's show, Liftoff yesterday. We did a run through, just a dress rehearsal, how this might play out. And we had the Jets getting Mekhi Lemon at 16. And I think there are several scenarios where he could fall to 16. And one of the things is, Chris, you were one of the first people that reported it. And I put it out there on your behalf, that a lot of the teams were very put off by the interviews they had at the Combine with Mekhi Lemon. So how much does that impact where he gets drafted? It's very tough to know that, because there are plenty of teams that had him in for private workouts, or they went to the USC Pro Day and they talked to him again, and he might have had a better impression of him another time out. So you really don't know. But again, we don't know what the Jets draft board looks like too, right? They could have Jordan Tyson number 1 on their board, but they could have him way off because they might be scared of the injuries. We don't know. They could have Mekhi Lemon very high on the board, but they could also say, I don't know, he was kind of a weirdo and we don't really think he fits us, so we have him down. We don't know what their board looks like, but I think you sit at 16 and you figure it out. And really, at the end of the decision is going to come, what's the value? What do you need? You put it all together. If they could get a trade down in this scenario, and a couple of people said, well, maybe the Eagles would jump up for a receiver. You could see even here's what I might do. Sort of what you saw Joe Douglas do a couple of years ago with Minnesota and J.J. McCarthy. If you're sitting there at 16 and let's say Caden Proctor or Monroe Freeling or Fano or Malinois or one of the, Blake Miller, one of those guys is on the board, and we know that the Lions really want to tackle. If you're sitting there at 16, maybe you try and bluff the Lions into saying, like, hey, give up a pick to move up a spot, or we're going to trade to whatever other team that is then going to take this tackle that you want. So give us a fourth or whatever it is to move back a spot. And then you still get whatever player it was that you were wanting in the first place. You could try a move like that. You could try moving down a couple of spots. I mean, that's if somebody's interested. And that's what I think is interesting about this draft when it comes to trade up and trade downs. It looks like the number of teams that want to move down greatly outnumbers the amount of teams that want to move up. And what that
It's all
means
of them,
is,
all of them.
yeah. So what that means is that you may see historically low prices to move up. And that's why I was saying, like, you might be able to move from, say, 16 to 11 or 12 and only give up that 140th pick to do it. And in that case, I'm okay with it because I don't think that you're giving away, like, if you're giving away 44 and 103 to move up from 16 to 7, for example, you're now giving up a guy at 44 who you're hoping to get as a starter, not just now, but for the long haul. And you're giving up an early fourth who could also potentially become a starting caliber player to move up for that guy. And if you're doing that, I think it's got to be a higher caliber prospect than somebody like Carnell Tate, who I like, but I don't think is a tier 1 receiver prospect, or Tyson, who I have a lot of injury concerns. And also, you mentioned the T-Rex arms. There's also some flaws in his game that a lot of people gloss over. Yeah, his route running is spotty. Going up and getting the ball sometimes he seems to be a little bit afraid of contact. Some of those circus catches he makes are going to be a lot tougher to make in the NFL. So there are certainly worries with Jordan Tyson when it comes to that stuff. So look, what I would say is the Jets should not be locked in on a wide receiver. And I know that the popular narrative is the Jets have to leave tonight with a receiver. They have to get impact players on offense, whatever. Get the best players you can for the build. And now that doesn't mean don't draft premium guys or don't draft guys that are at positions of need. It means feel it out and see what you think is best based on who's available on the board. I'll give you an example. I don't think there's any way he's there, but if, say, Mansour Delane is there at 16, then okay, fine, take him.
Yeah.
He's probably going to be the best player on their board. He's by many people's
a solid corner, but not your prototypical number 1 corner. Again,
right,
but it's another. No, I know. I'm just saying the position of value. Typically, the fans just say, he's the number 1 corner in the draft. I want him. He's the number 1 receiver in the draft. I want him. Not this year. Not this year. Yeah. It's not Darrelle Revis. It's not Calvin. Right. So it's all the most important, the offensive tackles. Same thing. I texted you the other day. I was like, man, the Jets are lucky that they don't need one this draft. And your point at 16, that's the middle of this draft. That's when the most jockeying is going to be done, because none of these offensive tackles are really, people are clamoring to take top 5, even top 10. But offensive tackle is so important, and you can only find the true studs in round 1. That teams are going to force these guys in for round 1. And so that means the middle and late part of the round is where teams are trying to try to jump over, like you said, the Lions. Everyone's going to try to jump over the Lions there. There's going to be lots, the Chargers are a team that the Texans are another team. Teams are going to try to jump in front of the Bears, all these teams. And all those teams could be looking to jump up as well, especially in this draft. This is a draft where a team might only have 8 players with a first round grade, and they might just say, "Screw it, we want one of these 8 players, and we're willing to package it up." And especially a team like the Rams, right, who has traditionally been in F them picks, and now they've gone back and forth. But they could just say, "Hey, we're going to give you every pick we have here just to move up." Real quick, smart-assing 101, you are correct. Drew
Yeah,
Messamaker is
I knew you were going to know. I knew
I'll
you were
see.
going to notice that comment. I knew you were going to notice that comment. There's another name, by the way, potentially if the Jets draft a quarterback in 2027. By the way, I got to mention again, and I'll say this a couple of times over the course of tonight, the super chats are open. So if you like what we're doing, throw us a couple bucks on the super chat would be much appreciated. And obviously, we'll be happy to answer your question, read your comment, whatever it is you'd like us to do. We'll dance for the money. That's what we do. We're dancing bears over here. So anything you guys want to mention or talk about or any of that, just throw it in on the super chat. I think right now the draft is 10 minutes away, and I've never seen this much uncertainty over a number 2 overall pick when we've known for months who the number 1 pick was for sure. And I will say, I was talking to my friend Chris Walker the other day, and we were saying how there is this weird talking point, and people will say, well, why do the Jets need to be so secretive? They have their choice of anybody they want. They pick second in the draft. And the answer to that is there is no benefit to them letting everybody know who they want for real. There is potential benefit in them being deceptive about it because you are hearing that the Cardinals want out of the number 3 pick. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that there is a team that wants to trade up to 3, and they want to do it because they want Arvell Reese or David Bailey. If the Jets make it clear that they are going to take Arvell Reese or David Bailey, whichever one it is that they say they're going to take, at number 2, that eliminates all the teams that want the other guy from trading up because they'll know they could just go to 3 with Arizona and bypass the Jets. If the Jets make it a mystery and they put it out there that it could be either of the 2 guys, or not even put it out there, but keep it lipped and let other people speculate, it raises the potential that somebody jumps in with a trade offer for them. Now, I think this is at the end of everything going to wind up with the Jets making the pick. I don't think they're going to get offers. In fact, I believe it was Jeremy Fowler reported that as of Wednesday, they hadn't really gotten much in the way of offers. So I think that's probably where this is heading. But that's what it comes down to. There is potential benefit in being secretive about it. There is no benefit in letting people know ahead of time. And what I will also say, as far as this decision goes, Chris, you and I talked about this, and this is why I strongly lean Reese, and I think the Jets will ultimately pick him. When you look at the 2 guys and you think about who you would want with the number 2 overall pick, you've got David Bailey, who, again, tier 2 edge rusher, maybe tier 1A, whatever you want to call it, tier 1B. And you've got Arvell Reese, who was an off-ball linebacker but showed you some real flashes off the edge as a pass rusher. And so you look at this draft, and Chris, going along with what you said, the best players in this draft are at non-premium spots. But the only guy in this draft that is a premium talent that could potentially play a premium spot is Arvell Reese.
Yeah.
So that to me is the argument. And again, if the worst case scenario is that he's just a really good off-ball linebacker and that's his floor, that's okay. Because that means he's not a bust. It means he's still a really good player. It means he's not what you hoped he would be, but he's still not a bad player. But if he comes anywhere close to that ceiling, he becomes one of the most impactful defensive players in the NFL. So if the ceiling is as high as it is and the floor is pretty good, in a draft where you don't have that elite premium position player available to you at number 2, as far as I'm concerned, betting on that upside when the downside isn't that great is the path forward. And that's why it's never made any sense to me to go in the other direction. Now, again, as I said, if they do take Bailey, the only rationale that makes sense to me is if they've looked at it and they've determined they just don't believe that Arvell Reese will ever be a quality pass rusher, and they think he's just an off-ball linebacker, and there's no hope for them to develop him. But I don't think that's the case. And if you look at and credit to Nicky Lattarulo over at SNY for getting these comments from both Bailey and Reese. If you look at what Reese said, he said he sat down with AG, he sat down with Carl Dunbar, and they went over how they would use him if he was here with the Jets. So that tells me that they probably do believe that he could be that player. And if they don't take him and still believe it, that's where I would be shaking my head and scratching my forehead. And I think the idea that, and I've seen this as a rationale too, you have a guy that you have to figure out a plan for. You have to have an idea of how you use him. The idea that Aaron Glenn and Carl Dunbar haven't come up with a plan, or at least really gotten into the beginning of a plan of how to develop and use Arvell Reese, I've never understood how anybody could think that. There's just no way. I mean, listen, Chris, you remember this when the Jets, it looked like they were going to get Baker Mayfield because
Yeah.
everybody thought Sam Darnold was a lock to go to the Browns. The Jets, and Robert Klemko at SI reported this at the time, the Jets had a playbook made up for Baker Mayfield. So they anticipated who they were going to get, and they knew how they were going to use him. If Aaron Glenn and Carl Dunbar are sitting there in a meeting telling Arvell Reese, here's how we'd use you, that kind of dispels that myth. But also, I never understood how anybody could think that anyway. You really think that Aaron Glenn and Carl Dunbar would take a guy and not have a plan on what to do with him? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, you know, Aaron Glenn. The name Aaron Glenn is mentioned, and just look at how people react to anything with his name.
Yeah.
People think Aaron Glenn is the dumbest person to ever walk the face of this earth. I was listening to the Athletic show today, and Robert Mays was. He's like the Jets are going to be terrible because I watched Aaron Glenn coach last year, and there's no way that it can be good. And I'm like, I mean, I get not liking what he did, but you can also that everything was stacked against him last year, and it only got worse. All right, so that the thing with Reese and the two positions caught in between, Isaiah Simmons. No, Isaiah Simmons was a tweener. Isaiah Simmons was somebody who in college was positionless. He did a bit of everything,
Right.
but he wasn't one thing or multiple things. There are teams that look at Arvell Reese and say he's an off-ball linebacker. Not he can't rush the passer, but this guy is as good as an off-ball linebacker as we have in this league. He's going to develop into that. Ollie Conway, I told you this. He was a scout in the NFL for a long time, specifically scouted linebackers. Luke Kuechly is the only linebacker he's graded higher than Arvell Reese as an off-ball linebacker. So this is saying he's could be a great off-ball linebacker doesn't take away from what he can do as an edge. He's also awesome there. It's just some teams say, yeah, he can do that, the rush the passer stuff, but he's going to be Luke Kuechly level off-ball linebacker. And there's other people that go, yeah, he could be Luke Kuechly level off-ball linebacker, but he's going to be awesome rushing the passer. And then, okay, maybe he's I'm going to invoke the name Micah Parsons, but not 100%. Even if he's just like 80% Micah Parsons, you're going to take that at number 2, especially in this draft.
In this draft, right?
Yeah. You're going to take that. And so, like you said, if he doesn't, you hear this all the time with tackles. All right, we're going to take him. The tackles that a lot of people think or project to kick inside, and the common talking point among teams is we're going to let them fail outside first and then kick them inside. And I like that idea in minicamp and training camp. Once the season starts, I want you to find a home for this guy. And I'm of the belief that I'd rather just take a guard like Vega that's a guard and keep him at guard than try to project moving from someone. But that's the difference is in that situation, you're moving and switching. We've seen Arvell Reese. He can rush the passer. He can play off-ball linebacker. And, okay, if at the NFL level he's not going to turn into this demon of a pass rusher, all right, we got somebody who grades out to be the best linebacker since Luke Kuechly. And again, that is a position that there's very not only are there very few elite ones, there's very few good ones, like even decent ones. Teams struggle to find a competent starter in that role. So that's one of those positions that off-ball linebacker I think has more value if you can get one of the guys than a lot of other people do. And if he can also rush the passer really well, and he's only 20 years old, so he's probably only going to get better at it. Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me in any type of way. None of it. Again, like I know there's teams that just fall in love with his off-ball linebacker ability, but there's no team that's looking at him like, oh yeah, no, he's no chance he could survive at edge. That's not what's happening. They're just saying he would be better as an off-ball linebacker, and all teams project him to be really good at both.
Yeah, and now, by the way, it is 8 o'clock. Draft should get underway any moment, and Fernando Mendoza will go off the board, and then the real fireworks will begin. The interesting thing is going to be, what is the domino effect? If the Jets take Reese or if the Jets take Bailey, what happens from there? And we'll start to be able to project that a little bit better once we get a little bit closer. And then obviously after the Reese pick, we'll have Michael, who's sitting over there, talk about the cap implications of the pick. We will have hopefully Nick Faria come back and talk about the feeling over at Florham Park. We'll have Jim Coburn jump in and talk about the data and analytics on Arvell Reese. And he had a really interesting comparison for Arvell Reese on Play Like a Jet last week that I won't talk about until after Arvell Reese goes off the board, whether it's with the Jets or with a different pick. But I think there's a really good comparison that Jim came up with that I think fits even better than Micah Parsons. I think Parsons is the easy one because of the proximity. We've talked about Jalen Walker as an interesting one as well. And remember, I've said this before, you'd like Arvell Reese to be a better player than Jalen Walker, but if Arvell Reese gives you the rookie season that Jalen Walker just gave the Falcons, that is not a bad rookie season at all. He had a really nice year. In fact, he and James Pierce Jr. both played really, really well. And now, of course, we know James Pierce got himself in trouble, although the reports today are that it looks like he's going to avoid jail time. The question is going to be whether or not the NFL takes any action and suspends him, or whether they let him off with a slap on the wrist. That remains to be seen. But I will say, obviously, for whatever anybody wants to say about that trade, and it looks very bad based on what he did off the field, if you look at just the production on field, James Pierce was really, really good last year. Jalen Walker was really, really good last year. Credit to Jeff Ulbrich for doing a good job with those two guys. But that's kind of the what you'd want to see in terms of if the Jets took Arvell Reese, you'd want Jalen Walker. You want him to have that Jalen Walker impact or better year one, while you would hope that Will McDonald would be that double-digit sack guy along the lines of what you saw from James Pierce Jr. So really interesting to see the different comps. Everybody jumps right to Parsons, but I think there are definitely other guys that you could compare him to. I think it's funny, by the way, as I look at the screen here and see the crowd at the NFL draft, I still remember going to the NFL draft when it was at the theater at MSG, and this is after it had been at Radio City Music Hall, and it was a small crowd because you can't fit that many people. It's maybe 1,000 or 2,000 people or whatever it is at the theater at MSG. Now you've got it looks like the entire city of Pittsburgh standing there at the NFL draft. There's like 100,000 people out there. It's absolutely wild what the draft has turned into. The NFL draft gets higher ratings than the NBA playoffs and the NHL playoffs every year. And it's just a show where people read out the names of guys that are eventually going to play in the NFL. It just tells you that the NFL is on a completely different level in terms of popularity than the other sports in the United States. Globally, it's a different story. We all know that in Europe, the other football, soccer, is big. We know that the football isn't as huge in countries past the United States, but in the United States, the NFL is king, and it doesn't seem like anything's going to change that. And you got to give it to Roger Goodell. As much as we could say bad things about him, he and the NFL have figured out a way to keep themselves in the spotlight all year long. They string everything out very carefully so that the NFL has something to be talked about at every juncture of the calendar. And now the draft has turned into an enormous spectator sport. Like I said, it boggles my mind that it has gotten this popular. As much as I love it, I'm shocked that average, everyday, normal football fans who don't obsess about this stuff will tune in. And look, it used to be, you remember, Chris, it was 12 rounds. And then when it was 7 rounds, it was Saturday, Sunday. That was it. Now they put it in prime time on Thursday, then Friday's prime time, then the day three is Saturday. They've made this into a whole huge event. And it's wild that they've been able to turn this into what they've turned it into. So kudos to the league for whatever else we want to say about them. They've done a good job with that. Right now, all the Steelers guys are on the stage. I'm reminded of my all-time favorite, Pat McAfee, when he was trash talking the Titans fans on stage in Tennessee. That was a good one. I know Steve Rollins did that. Was it last year?
Drew Pearson with the Cowboys fans was the best, or the Eagles fans. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there have been some really good ones. Oh, there's Terry Bradshaw, by the way, or and this is an old reference, as Christina Applegate's character Kelly Bundy once called him on Married with Children, Terry Shawshank. So that was an excellent episode of Married with Children. But yeah, we are getting closer and closer to this NFL draft kicking off and the Jets being on the clock. And that's when we'll see if the Jets have successfully been able to bluff anybody into trading up, and whether or not the David Bailey smoke is real, or whether what we're seeing Arvell Reese. And it's funny because the betting odds switched multiple times today. Again, Arvell Reese, as of now, the betting favorite. It wasn't that way a few hours ago. Reese was the favorite a few hours before that. Then Bailey, Reese. It's gone back and forth 100 times to this point. And so we will see what this ends up meaning. Now, Chris, I've talked to you about the betting markets when it comes to the draft picks and things like that.
Yeah.
A lot of it is just responding to reports. It's responding to different signals in the market. So if a bunch of the NFL insiders across the country come out and say Bailey, the odds are going to swing to Bailey. If Arvell Reese comes out and does a whole thing about how he had this great meeting with the Jets and they sat him down and they told him what they were going to do with him, and he visited the facility and all that, and David Bailey in the same set of questions says, I don't really remember much about the meeting, and I've met with a bunch of teams and all that. I've talked to them on Zoom, and that's about it. Then the odds shift the other way. There's no real inside information at play, I don't think. I think it's largely in a case like this, something where the markets are just responding to the available information. Now, we're going to find out in a few minutes if the betting markets are correct and if people are reading these signals right. But as I said, Chris, this is very interesting to me because it's very rare that you have this deep of a split where you have this many people saying one thing, this many people on the other side saying another thing, and it's really confused everybody. It almost reminds me, I think it was Pretty Ricky Scoops on Twitter. He's the guy that he's sort of an unsanctioned sleuth. He always finds ways to get interesting tidbits, and he had a meme where it's Brick Johnson talking to Darren Muji, and he says, I need you to leak to the national guys that were taking Bailey and the local guys that were taking Reese. And Muji says to him, Brick, are we trying to angle for a trade? And Brick says, no, I just think it would be hilarious. Do it. And like you said, Chris, to me, when I sent you that, it's as good of an explanation at this point as anything else. So right now, we wait to see what happens with the Jets. We know that it's going to be Fernando Mendoza, clearly, at number one. My brother the other day, Chris, said, what do you think the Jets would do if the Raiders didn't take Mendoza at number one? I go, well, they'd sprint to the podium and take Mendoza. And then he said, well, what if they wanted to trade him? I said, well, I think at this point, if they had wanted to trade him, something would have happened. But I think it's pretty clear that they have made their plans to have Mendoza for quite a while, and he's going to go number one. But wouldn't it be the craziest swerve ever? Again, never going to happen. If the Raiders were like, nah, we changed our mind. We want David Bailey, or we're going to punt on quarterback or whatever. It'd be really funny if that happened. It's not going to, though. Mendoza's
all this hand-wringing over who goes at number 2, and then the
right.
Raiders are like, actually, we want Arvell Reese. How about
Yeah.
that?
We want Arvell Reese. I remember I was along the lines of like multiple teams picking a guy. I remember we were at the draft. I want to say it was 90. Was it 95 or 96? Tony Baselli, I believe, was the second pick in the draft. The offensive lineman from the Jaguars, who was a great player, by the way. And I think he's the radio
Yep.
commentator now for the
Yeah.
Jaguars. But Baselli was Baselli was drafted by the Jaguars at number 2, but it was during a commercial break. So when they came back from break, they had to do it again for the TV audience. And then later on, they had to film it again for something for NFL Films. So if you were watching in the live audience, it looked like Baselli had been drafted 3 separate times. So the joke became every time another team came up, a bunch of people in my section would yell out, Tony Baselli! So he was going to be drafted multiple times in that draft. I don't think it's going to happen, though, with Fernando Mendoza. Chris, the Giants picked twice in the top 10. You don't see that a lot. The Jets did it a couple of years ago, number 4 and number 10. They got Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson. I'm sure that if the Giants could get 2 players as good as those 2, they'd be very happy with those picks at number 4, at number 5, and number 10. I don't want to really start talking about it yet. By the way, the pick is in for the Raiders, and it will not shock you to learn that I'm pretty sure it's Fernando Mendoza.
What?
In fact, I will exceed what Daniel Jeremiah said. I will say it's a 100% certainty that's Fernando Mendoza. I don't want to start getting into what the Giants may do until we see the Jets do what they're going to do at number 2. And then from there, things will move. But
Caleb Vega.
That's what you think, Caleb? All right, we'll get back to that. I wouldn't be shocked. And I will say this before we get too deeply into it. Everybody's throwing Jordan Tyson their way. And I wonder if that's out there on purpose because, granted, the Ravens have not picked high a lot since Harbaugh was there. But the highest drafted wide receiver the Ravens have taken since Harbaugh was the coach was Zay Flowers, and he was 22nd. Yeah. So it makes you wonder, would Harbaugh take a running back like Jeremiah Love or a wide receiver like Jordan Tyson at 5 or a 10? I don't know. I feel like an offensive tackle or guard or maybe an impactful defensive player might make more sense based on what we know of John Harbaugh. And look, whatever we can say about Joe Schoen, Harbaugh's making the decisions there. Yeah, whoever the guy is that's doing his bidding, it's not from what we understand, it is essentially Joe Schoen is a potted plant. Yeah. He's a figurehead, and there's someone in that front office making the decisions on behalf. And there's Mendoza, by the way, at number 1. Real shock. So now the draft really begins here with the Jets at number 2. But whoever it is that's doing this on behalf of Harbaugh, what is he being instructed to do? That's the big question here. So we'll get back to that. It's a fascinating thing, but we'll get back to that. Right now, though, Chris, Mendoza's off the board. There has begun some speculation that maybe Ty Simpson is going to go higher than we expect. And you're hearing rumblings that perhaps the Cardinals trade out of number 3. And with the pick they get when they trade back, they might take Ty Simpson. I'm not buying it. That seems to me to be like Ty Simpson agent smoke. But we've seen crazier things. Remember, we all thought that Bo Nix was going to go in the second round. He went 12th. Because what happened ultimately was the Broncos looked at it and said, if we don't take Nix here, we may not get him, so let's just take him, and they did it. Maybe the Cardinals or somebody else thinks that with Ty Simpson, and they decide to bite the bullet. Now, I wouldn't do it, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if it would happen with anybody, it would be a quarterback. So that's something to keep your eye on here. The Jets on the clock. There's 4.5 minutes left. Chris, they're going to take this all the way down to the wire because
Oh,
why not?
absolutely. Yeah, especially because there's only 8 minutes now, but they're gonna milk the 8.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Let me add this real quick, just about the betting stuff. When it comes to the NFL draft, when it comes to betting on the NFL draft, if you're going to go to a sports book, like you're going to go to FanDuel, DraftKings, they are going to limit you. And I don't care if it's your first time ever. There's only so much money that those books will let you put down, because otherwise, somebody working for the Jets could just unload $1 million on Arvell Reese and just roll with it. So they have to have limits. Now, what's changed the last couple of years is the prediction markets, Polymarket and Kalshi, because there's no limits with those. So I was texting you the other day about the huge swings they've made. And yes, markets will always move based off the big mocks, but sometimes Kalshi now can swing. If somebody can come in with big money and drop that on Kalshi, and all the other books are going to notice that, and they're going to respect that, and they're going to move the lines based off that. The draft lines do not work like the regular season and playoff lines. They trust me, from somebody who has multiple bets sprinkled throughout this draft, they limit how much you can put down. If you want to put actual amounts of money on stuff, you have to make the same bet at multiple different books.
And by the way, Chris, the pick is in. The cameras have shown both Arvell Reese and David Bailey.
Yeah.
So we should find out any second who the pick is here. We're going to find out who's right about this. And now the camera is zooming in on David Bailey. We don't see the phone ringing in either green room. I'm not sure exactly how this is playing out. Somebody is being talked to, obviously. People are looking at phones. And, man, this has come down to the wire in a way that I never expected it to, where there is a lot of angst and a lot of people going back and forth on this. Jets contingent is in Pittsburgh. I see them right now. They're wearing their Jets uniforms. They're doing their Jets chant. And we are about to find out if the Jets have decided to go with the guy that most people think is the better overall prospect in Arvell Reese, or whether they've decided to go with the guy that is the more refined pass rusher as of now in David Bailey. They're going to the podium. So as soon as this gets announced, we will talk in depth about it. We won't give it away, Chris. Remember, we are going to make sure that until it is shown on television, we're not going to talk about it. We don't want to be those guys that
I'm
give
on
away.
The internet, so I'm behind TV.
So either way, we won't give it away until it is actually announced. That's one thing that Peter Schrager talked about the other day. That's what I think needs to stop. It's one thing if somebody gets intel on a pick well ahead of time. It's another thing if somebody finds out 3 minutes before it's announced on TV. That, I think, is something that it really ruins the fun of the draft, as Roger Goodell comes to the podium to announce the pick here by the Jets, the number 2 overall pick in the 2026 draft.
Yeah, I'm going to get this news from you. So
you certainly are. And it's David Bailey at number 2 for the Jets. So I'm surprised. I think this is the wrong pick, but I do think that Bailey is a very good player. So I'm not crushed by this, but I am surprised. I thought that it was going to be Arvell Reese, and this is interesting. I would love to know the rationale, and obviously they're not gonna tell you the truth when they do this. But
that's the whole thing. I'm ready to crush them for the explanation, but they're not gonna come out and say, "Oh, we took him because he's going to give us the best." They're not going to come out and say we took him for this year. This doesn't make sense to me. I have to crush him for this. You can't I don't understand how you can look at this and think this is the best long-term plan. And I don't understand how you can look at everything else about the Jets and be like, we need to make a decision for strictly this year. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hung up on, and I can't get past. Why would you? We talk about this all the time. Fans are always like, "Oh, we need this for this year." No, you're drafting a guy in the first round, hopefully for at least 5 years, and you're hoping that you're going to acquire a bunch more talent afterwards. So you should. That's why you should never. You always just take the best player available in first round, stack the talent, fill needs in free agency and later rounds. But to do all this and then be like, okay, it's to save Aaron Glenn's job. Like, I'm looking at Muji differently now because if you ask me, Muji has had a very, especially everything I have talked to and heard, that yeah, obviously Aaron Glenn's a little bit on the hot seat. There's people pre-fired, all whatever. But Muji has a very real chance to survive. Aaron Glenn get fired and him survive. And now I'm looking at him like, you get the hell out of here too. And if I'm Woody Johnson and I'm sitting here being like, you got questions about Aaron Glenn, and you're like, he might be gone next year, and you built up all these draft picks to go for 2027, and now you're making a move at 2 for 2026 and not thinking about beyond 2026. This doesn't make any sense to me. I can't wrap my head around it. I just can't.
Yeah, like I said to you, I think the only way this makes sense is if they only see Arvell Reese as an off-ball linebacker. If they don't see Arvell Reese as a guy that could be a real difference maker in as a pass rusher, and they just see him as, an Anthony Barr type, then okay. If they see David Bailey as a multiple season double digit sack guy, and that's how they see Arvell Reese, then okay. But I don't see it that way, and I'm very surprised that they apparently do. So I guess all the national guys were right on this one.
Yep.
Again, I'm surprised. I thought for
National
sure.
and Samini. Got to give Samini credit.
Yeah, and Samini. I'm surprised at this. I think again it's the wrong pick, but I look. All we can do now as Jets fans is what I always say. I wanted the Jets to take Brock Bowers. They took Olu. I thought it was the wrong pick. I still do. I still would have taken Bowers over Olu, but Olu's turned into a pretty good tackle. So it's not like it was a bad pick. And I think with Bailey, that's what Jets fans will ultimately come down on, which is, yeah, okay, everybody that wanted Reese, and they think he's the better player. But when Bailey's out there and he's really wreaking havoc on quarterbacks potentially, and let's say he has 10 sacks his rookie year, I'm just throwing that out there, Jets fans will come around and say, okay, this guy's pretty good, even if Reese ends up being the better player. So that's kind of where I come down. This sort of reminds me a little bit of the Will McDonald pick, honestly, where I didn't love it, but I also didn't hate it as much as others in the sense that I wanted Jackson Smith and Jigba. I didn't really want Broderick Jones. I didn't think much of him. And so when they took McDonald, I'm like, well, a little higher than I'd have taken him, but I still think he's going to be a good player, so I'm okay with it. That's sort of where I'm at with this. I think it's the wrong pick, as I said. And, look, hopefully David Bailey proves us wrong. Hopefully David Bailey goes out there. You've seen people try and compare him to Nick Bonito, which I don't see. But if he's Nick Bonito, then I think a lot of Jets fans will be fine with it. But I don't think he's going to be, but I hope he
That's
is.
The ceiling. That's right, best case scenario.
Fine, but if he's Nick Bonito and he's an all-pro edge rusher, then great. I'll take it. And I won't – then I'll come out and I'll say, you know what? Arvell, they made the right move. He's awesome. Good for them, blah, blah, blah. At the moment, I think this is the wrong move. I just saw somebody say season over. All right, let's not get carried away now. Again, I have to reemphasize this, and I've said this a couple times. David Bailey is a very good player. I think he will help the Jets pass rush. I think it's very possible he becomes a double-digit sack guy for several seasons of his career. However, I don't think he was the best pick to make here. I don't think he was the best player on the board. And that's where I think this is an issue. Also, as we said, Reese 20 years old, Bailey 23, all of that. But clearly the Jets felt differently. So look, I'm not crestfallen by it. I'm disappointed. I don't think it was the right move, but I think David Bailey's run defense is better than people say it is. And Jeremiah Love goes at number 3. By the way, that's wow, that's
They
crazy.
really did that?
Yeah, Jeremiah Love at number 3. I thought that it was a smokescreen. I can't believe they did that. That to me is nuts.
They have
I
no offensive line.
Yeah, they have no quarterback or offensive line. It's insane.
I love Jeremiah Love. Jeremiah Love is awesome. You can tell me he's the best player in this draft, and I believe it because he's gonna. They have weapons on offense too. They just don't have an offensive line. I'm over you can't draft running backs high, but it has to be a perfect storm. You have to have an offensive line already in place. You have to not have a bunch of other needs. I can't. What are they doing? That's nuts. Jeremiah Love is awesome, but you need to get him on running back is the position most dependent on your teammates around you. We saw this with Saquon, right? Saquon, as awesome as he is, he was not able to overcome the Giants being bad. We saw it last year. The Raiders took Ashton Jeanty, and Ashton Jeanty is not anywhere near the same prospect as Jeremiah Love. Ashton Jeanty does not have the explosiveness as Love has, but they had no offensive line. It's a disaster pick when you need so much the player to rely on so much else around you that's not there.
And also, I forget who it was. I'm trying to remember. Somebody, I think it was Dan Graziano over at ESPN said this. I think when you look at the fact that the running back picked at number 3, and I want to bring Michael in a second on the salary cap implications here. When you look at the number 3 overall pick, the guy picked there at running back is going to be instantly top of the market. And so now you not only have to pay him top of the market, you still have to find guys at the premium spots, and you have to try and find them for reasonably cheap. That becomes so much harder now. At number 2 with David Bailey, whatever we want to say about him, if he turns out to be a really good pass rusher, the Jets are getting a bargain for the next 4 to 5 years because of the fact that he plays a premium spot. With Jeremiah Love, there's really no universe where this becomes a bargain. So, Michael, I want to bring you in here and talk about the contracts, both for Reese and for Love. Talk about what this means for the Jets with, not Reese, with Bailey at number 2, and then talk about what I just said with Jeremiah Love and the contract situation with running backs.
All right, first I'm going to talk about Jeremiah Love because he's going to get almost $54 million. He's going to be the crazy. Next season. His signing bonus is going to be $35.6 million, and he's going to make the minimum salary. So it's going to be just over $36 million cash value next year. He's going to be the highest paid running back in the league for 2026. Just in the cash value of the contract for 2026. He's not going to live up to that contract, like Chris said, behind that offensive line.
Yeah. And I mean, the running back is the finishing piece.
And it's not his fault. He's awesome.
He might live up to the contract on the whole by the end, but he's not going to live up to $36 million for one season.
This is the kind of pick you make when you are a team like, say, the Kansas City Chiefs, that is always good and had an off year, that then you can make a pick like this. When you're the Cardinals and you have a disastrous team with no O-line and no quarterback, this is to me crazy. And this is why positional value does matter. And so, Michael, talk a little bit now about David Bailey, because if he winds up being a really good pass rusher, the Jets are getting themselves a market bargain for the next 4 to 5 years compared to what they would have to pay a top end edge rusher who is an unrestricted free agent.
Yes. However, if you're looking at not just the first contract, but the second contract, remember for the first 32 picks in the draft are fully guaranteed contracts.
But by the way, I do
So-
want to say the Titans pick is in. I'm predicting it's going to be Arvell Reese. I just don't think Salah is going to be willing to pass on a defensive player that talented. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh, he's taking it easy.
Remember, the first 32 picks are fully guaranteed contracts based on the union deal in 2020. Now, we know last year picks 33 through 40 all were negotiated full, except for one, but that was off-field issues. So so basically 1 through 40 are fully guaranteed contracts. So David Bailey's going to get around $55.5 million in his first 4 years in the league. Now, if Arvell Reese was that pick, it would have been the same amount of money. But let's say Arvell Reese doesn't transition to full-time edge.
Wow, Carnell Tate at number 4. I guess Brian Dable wins the day.
I called it weeks ago.
Well, I did say that if they were going to pick an offensive player, this is the one that made the most sense. But this is great. So the Giants could get Arvell Reese here and then come and get an offensive lineman at 10. I mean, I love that for them. And listen, let's be honest. If the Giants get Arvell Reese and he turns out to be anything close to what we think he's going to be, I can't even – I don't even want to think about what that's going to be.
They're going to take him.
Yeah, no, 100% they're going to take him.
Are you sure about that? We thought Aaron Rodgers was going to go.
John Harbaugh's not passing him up. When you were talking about the Giants before, there's something I wanted to jump in on about the Harbaugh stuff. It's just fascinating because so many people look at what the Ravens did and they want it now, and they just want to be like, oh, the Giants are going to do this same stuff. The Ravens do what the Ravens do. John Harbaugh, sure, he had a voice in that room, but man, like the Ravens, they have been running before Harbaugh. He is not the one voice in that room. So now he's going to the Giants as the guy, the shot caller. And yeah, he's going to take a lot of the same principles he had with him in Baltimore, but that doesn't mean he's going to do everything exactly like Eric DeCosta and Ozzie Newsome would do. He's gonna put his own spin and his own flavor on it. And so yeah, maybe he'll look at some of these types of things. And I said Sonny or Caleb Downs.
By the way, if Arvell Reese is there at like number 8, would you trade up for him?
Yes. Everything I said before about yes, I would trade up for him. Absolutely. He's one of the few people in this draft that I think are elite.
I think he may go right here. It'll be interesting. I don't know that I'm buying the Jordan. Unless they take Sonny Styles.
I mean, I think Sonny Styles would have been, but I just can't imagine that that Harbaugh is going to be like that. He's going to pass on him. I just can't. But then again, I've been wrong every step of the way. So I mean, not on the Titans. I thought they were going Carnell Tate this whole time. It's just you can't have Wan'Dale Robinson as your number one receiver for Cam Ward. Yeah, I know Calvin Ridley, he was terrible last year. You can't have Wan'Dale Robinson, Eric Ioman, no. So This made all the sense in the world to me. I didn't understand why more people weren't talking to me, and I really didn't understand why it was plus 1,200 everywhere. And then it only grew. Like today, you could have gotten it for like plus 5,000. No one was talking about it. Everyone was talking, even not specifically about the Titans, but a lot of people. Jordan Tyson was being talked about as the first receiver taken. The other thing I want to talk about with the Giants and Harbaugh, though, you know this. We talked about this Harbaugh, the special teams guy, right? And yeah, he is the special teams guy. But you know who ran the defensive meetings in Baltimore? John Harbaugh. Like John Harbaugh ran the defensive meetings, even when Jesse Minter was still there as a defensive coordinator. John Harbaugh ran those meetings. So John Harbaugh is we think of him, we talk about him as a special team CEO type. He fancies himself as a little bit more of a defensive guy. And
well, he was a defensive backs coach. He was when he was
right. Yeah,
when
yeah.
he was transitioning to head coach.
Yeah,
he coached the Eagles, right?
Yeah,
before the Ravens.
Yeah.
Well, when he was just a special teams coordinator, the year before he became a head coach for the Ravens, they gave him DB responsibilities.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
So,
no, for sure.
To make him the other teams want him more as a head coach.
So here comes the interesting part of this. You got to figure the Giants. I would think they take one of the 3 Ohio State guys here, but look, they could take a receiver because maybe they're afraid now with Tate off the board. Maybe they're afraid. Maybe they like Tyson and they're afraid. I mean, wouldn't be my play. But that could be the case. The Browns, everybody expects them to try and move out, and if they can't, do they go wide receiver? Because a lot of people thought they would go with Carnell Tate. I still think the better move for them is to try and get a receiver when they pick at number 24 and to take a tackle at number 6. You could have whichever tackle you want, which in this case probably would be Mawano or Fano, but who knows for sure. But it all kind of gets going with the Giants pick. So far, just to recap, we've had Fernando Mendoza at 1. The national guys wound up being right with David Bailey at number 2 to the Jets. Number 3 was Jeremiah Love, which, wow. And number 4, we just saw Carnell Tate go to Robert Saleh and the Tennessee Titans. And now, like I said to you, Chris, I'd have taken Arvell Reese there for sure. But if he hadn't been on the board, I was assuming Reese and Bailey would go 2 and 3. With those two, one of them still on the board, I would have gone with one of them. But if the board had played out the way I expected, I would have gone Carnell Tate at 4, because the way I look at it is, if you're going to take an offensive weapon with the 4th pick, take the receiver, not the running back. Yeah. And I get that Jeremiah Love is really, really good, but we already went through all the reasons. Oh, wait a second. The Browns have traded their pick to Kansas City. So Kansas City has jumped up from number 9 to number 6.
The Browns have been trying to trade out for months.
Well, here's what I wonder, though. Let's see what happens.
Spags wants Reese?
Because the Chiefs need pass rushers. It could be Arvell Reese if the Giants don't pick him here. And, I mean, look, I don't think I need to tell you this, Chris. We all know that if Arvell Reese goes to the Chiefs, he's going to be one of the best players in the league. It's almost a guarantee. So,
or are they trading up for Tyson?
That could be too. I guess it really depends on what the Giants do here. But obviously, the Chiefs made a trade up knowing what the Giants have done. The pick has been in, but it hasn't been announced.
They obviously were trying to trade with the Giants, got what the Giants were doing.
Or they had to deal with the Browns where it was like, okay, if this guy is on the board when you pick, we will make this trade. Yeah. So this will be interesting. I want to see what the Giants do here, but I think that, man, this has been.
If Sonny Styles doesn't go here, I think Sonny Styles could fall.
I think he probably goes to. They're saying Washington at 7 is probably the floor for him.
Well, yeah, that's true. Now that Jeremiah Love's gone, I've in my head I've had Love going to Washington this whole time. That made sense to me because of the running quarterback they have an offensive line already. Go back to 2 years ago where, all right, we're just going to have to outscore everybody. That made sense to me. I'm not saying that would have been the route I would have gone, but I understood that. So in my head, that makes sense that they would go for Sonny now.
Yeah, I guess again, it really depends on what if Jim Harbaugh wants that pure off-ball linebacker here, then John Harbaugh, then maybe he goes with Styles. If he sees in Arvell Reese what a lot of people are saying, then maybe they go that route. And I wonder if the Giants don't take Reese here, do the Chiefs take him at 6? Or as you said, are they trading up for Jordan Tyson? I mean, it's really and also like here's the thing, I kind of want Tyson to fall a little bit, only because that might mean that it prevents a run on receivers. Because once Tyson comes off the board, then teams might start to scramble at receiver, and that might not be great for the Jets. So, and there it is. It's Arvell Reese to the Giants. I knew that was going to happen. And let me tell you, if Arvell Reese turns out to be the player we expect, Jets fans are never going to hear the end of this. And Aaron Glenn is never going to hear the end of this ever if Arvell Reese is anywhere near as good as we think he can be. So they better hope that David Bailey is the player they think, because if he's not and Reese turns out to be anywhere near what we think, this is going to be a very tough pill for Jets fans to swallow. And like I said, Aaron Glenn will never hear the end of this. Listen, we all remember, and I'm not saying it's going to be this, but we all remember Portland and Oklahoma City. Kevin Pritchard did a lot of good stuff as the general manager of the Blazers. But the one thing he can never live down, and the one thing that the owner would never let him forget, is that he took Greg Oden at number 1 over Kevin Durant at number 2. And again, I'm not saying Bailey is going to be a bust. I don't think he will. And I'm not saying that Reese is going to be Kevin Durant. But I am saying that if something like that happens, especially considering that Reese just went to the Giants, that is going to be a really tough pill for everybody to swallow.
If Oden was healthy, though, if Oden didn't have the injury issues, where would the conversation have gone, though?
Well, how do we know? There's no way to know.
All right, so let's stick with the Trailblazers and go Sam Bowie and Michael Jordan.
Yeah, you could do that too.
Let's stick with the Trailblazers, Sam Bowie and Michael Jordan.
But as far as the contracts are concerned, if you look into the second contract and you look at the analytics, I know a lot of people hate analytics, but if you look at the analytics and the production that David Bailey has to produce to match what we think that Reese could do as an edge rusher linebacker hybrid, based on the edge rusher market, Reese's second contract is going to be more valuable when you combine the first two contract guaranteed money. So even at number 2, which is a $7 million difference between where the Giants picked him, if you think David Bailey is going to end up being a great pass rusher who's limited in run defense, but Reese becomes the hybrid who isn't a full-time edge rusher, you could get 4 sacks from Reese and a takeaway or 2, and the takeaways are worth more than sacks because you get the ball back right away.
Yeah.
So even if you only get a takeaway or 2, it's still not. You still need to get double-digit sacks just to match them.
Yeah. I think this is look. I don't think Arvell Reese is going to get a ton of takeaways like that. Like, I don't think we're looking at, like you said, a 30-30 or whatever. By the way, I will say this now: it was Clay Matthews that was the comparison that Jim.
But if it's 4 sacks and 1 or 2 takeaways, if you include the run stop,
Bailey could have strip sacks or something like that too. So it's not Like
But
that's
those don't
impossible to
happen as
happen.
often. Those don't happen as often as interceptions.
Yeah,
Good.
I mean, look,
Possible. Look. Let's just let me. I've been super negative on this, and I'm going to continue to be. But let me just say a couple quick good things about David Bailey. That first step is crazy.
yeah.
That first step is insane, and like literally, like you blink and you're going to miss it. Now he needs to develop multiple moves and multiple stuff. He's going to need to get bigger and thicker. He's going to need to work on his technique. I talked to you the other day about the run stuff. Uh, it's not a lack of want to. The effort is there. We talked about this in basketball. I always say like defense is just 90% effort. And it's a large part of it in the NFL, but it's also you need technique and you just need to be physical, strong, fast enough, all that good stuff. But want to is a big part of it. Now he has the
Wow,
want to.
Mansour Delane, by the way, at number
They
6.
traded up. They
Yeah.
didn't think. Who did they think was
Well,
going to take
there
him?
was a lot of noise that several teams were looking to move up for Delane. Remember the issue here. The issue here, Chris, I think, is that because you have a
Do
situation
we have
where
do we have terms for the deal? Did you see terms on it? Sorry,
no, I haven't seen that yet. The
They got
Commanders
a
are in the
third and
top.
a fifth.
a third and a
Oh,
fifth
that's
to
not
move
terrible.
up. To move up 3 spots, that's pretty good. To
Yeah, it's not
collect a
bad. By
third
the
and a fifth,
way, the Washington's pick is in. I'm gonna say Sonny Styles here.
yeah.
I think that supposedly Dan Quinn really likes him. We'll see. And
I'll go
and
Sunny
they were
Styles there, and I'll go Saints take Jordan Tyson.
they might or there's a variety of ways they could go on defense too.
If
Ruben
if
Bain is a possibility.
if the
Where are we
Commanders
stand
don't
on the
take
Commanders?
Styles, he could go to the Bucks or
At
Ravens.
nine, I think the Browns gotta at this point. I mean, they could go Tyson, but if it's me, I'm taking Mawanoa if he's still there at 9. I mean, just take the
Well, I
offensive
mean, you got
line.
to worry about that herniated disc, but
Well, all right, but fine, but whatever. Then
I'm just
take whoever
saying,
you have as.
doctors. You just got to, if
Well,
your
what I'm
doctors
saying,
clear it, then you clear it.
what I'm saying, Chris, is take whoever you have as your highest rated tackle at 9.
Yeah.
That's
I'm
what I
with you.
would do.
I'm with you.
So and then
Once
Cleveland, and then
they traded down, that's their thinking. Because if they were going to get the receiver first, they would have they'd be more worried. I think they wouldn't trade down.
here's one. Caleb Downs is on. Let's say Caleb Downs is on the board at 11. Would you consider making a move to 11 for Caleb Downs? Because you figure the Cowboys would take him if he's there.
I'd absolutely consider it. That's another thing. We talked about this a lot. That right after the combine, there was the news about he's got some degenerative knee
Which
issues, and
turned
I
out
haven't
to
heard
apparently not be
anything
true.
since then.
Yeah, and I
And now
asked.
I love him. You guys, everyone knows I love him. So if the doctors cleared him with me, then I would absolutely do that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Downs is interesting because I talked to Joey Kaufman from the Columbus Dispatch, and I asked him about that issue, and he said he was completely unaware of that. You'd think he would know, being somebody that has sources close to the school and all that. So, I mean, it sounds like it's not really a thing. But then again, if he drops, then maybe we find out it was. Because if he's still sitting there, can you imagine, Chris? He's sitting there at 16. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen. But if he is, I think you sprint to the podium unless there's something we don't know about. The Commanders here at 7. I'm saying Sonny Styles. I mean, it could be Tyson as well.
It should be.
Here's what I'm curious.
They need
Here's what I'm.
defense so bad.
But I'm also curious about this, Chris. With Tyson, there's been this whole surge about how he's the true number one receiver list. We're going to find out how much of this is smoke and how much of this is true based on what we see the next couple of picks because it may be, listen, we know this. The agents and stuff, they do a lot of work around this. So,
Yeah, they absolutely do. I know that that right after his workout, my phone started going crazy, and I everywhere I looked, it was just people. There was a lot of people who weren't saying anything about Jordan Tyson, and then it was like they were unleashed. And we're just talking about running routes against air. He didn't run a 40, no three-cone drill. He didn't do actual workout. He ran like 25 routes against, and people were like banging the table. They were jumping for joy, celebrating. And that's not agent doing the work. The pure glee and joyousness that was coming off my phone, that's not agent doing work.
Well, speaking of which, by the way, one thing that hasn't been talked about enough, and Jim Coburn, who I think is going to join us momentarily, talked about this. Everybody discusses Ruben Bain's arm length, and with good reason, but it's a little concerning, is it not, that he did zero athletic testing? Not even in his pro day.
But it's also, that's just the world we live in now. And
right, but all these other guys have done
something. They only do it if they think they're going to do well. That's the problem.
Right, but that's what I'm telling you. I think that's, to me, a bit of a warning sign. If he was that scared that he wasn't going to do well, you have to wonder if if there's a world where, and by the way, Sonny Styles is the pick for Washington as we expected. So now we go to number 8 in New Orleans. But that is weird. It does definitely concern me a little bit if I'm thinking about Ruben Bain. I wonder, was he really going to do that poorly that he had to hide from doing that? Because all these guys do something. Even Jordan Tyson did something. He didn't do a lot, but he did something. Ruben Bain didn't do anything. So that makes you wonder a little bit. Like, what is he afraid of that he wouldn't do anything?
Well, and then Todd McShay is going to call me a scumbag for bringing this up, but
Well, right, yes, of course.
There's the whole off-field thing.
To be fair, Chris, you are a scumbag, but for other reasons.
The thing about that report too, that obviously the accident, the girl's life, horrible, tragic.
Yeah.
But there's the report that we're worried it could happen again. That jumped out and smacked me reading that report.
Right. Although, look, the girl's parents apparently believe it's an accident. No charges were pressed. So
accident. I'm not questioning it. Yeah. But it does, accident or not, that a girl's dead.
Of course.
And there's concern. I don't know how fair or not it is, but there's real concern that he hadn't learned his lesson. So that, I don't know how real any of that is, but if there's any truth to that, that's going to scare some teams off. And now, if one team that wouldn't be scared off from that is the Kansas City Chiefs, and we just saw they traded up to get somebody else. So, the Cowboys are another team that definitely aren't going to be scared by stuff like that. The Eagles aren't going to be concerned about that, anything like that. But most other teams, they're gonna have a little bit of pause about that at least. And if you have other questions and concerns, the arm length, the not testing, all that stuff, and then you throw that into it, now we're bumping you down even more.
By the way, as I told you with the top 30 visit with David Bailey, since that became a whole thing, I knew it didn't really matter, and a lot of people were acting like it was a big deal. And clearly, they had met with him at the pro day, they had met with him at the combine. It wasn't really something they clearly. What this tells you is that they clearly had settled on him, and they felt no need to bring him in for a meeting. So what I told you is it could have gone either way. It could have been that they decided that they saw they needed to, and they were going with Reese, or they saw they needed to, and they wanted to go with Bailey. But clearly, that was the scenario.
I told you when that news came that news led me to think Bailey. If I was just judging it off that news, I would have said Bailey. I didn't understand why everyone went the opposite way. If you're going to cancel that, then I think that means that you're decided that you're good enough with him. I just thought everything else outweighed that still. And I thought maybe there might have been some smoke in that. And now that brings us back. You were talking at the beginning when we first started about them deserving a lot of credit, and about masking. And I'm going to say no, they don't now.
No.
No, because for the past week, every national person and Samini has been saying it's David Bailey.
Well, true, but the local guys were saying the reverse, and the betting markets had kept flip flopping. So
I understand, but the national guys got it. They've had it for a week, and they've remained.
Well, what I wonder is like, here's what I'm thinking. I don't think the Jets leaked it out. I think there was enough there that teams figured out what they were going to do. Now, I'd love to. I'm not going to have this opportunity, but I would love to talk to one of the league sources that was feeding this stuff to these guys and be like, what is it that you heard? What is it that you pieced together that made you figure this out? So I would love to know. But yeah, you're right. These national guys all had it. I mean, look, McShay is one. Forget him. He went up and down 1,000 times.
Yeah. It's
but
a joke around every podcast I've been listening to, and it's been joking about how McShay changes his mind every other 20 minutes. Like this, everyone's noticed this with McShay.
I will say one thing that bothered me, that made me a little nervous, and obviously turned out to be, is when you hear a guy like Daniel Jeremiah say, "I'm 95% sure."
Yeah.
I mean, that got me a little, because I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, he went from, I think it's going to be Bailey, I'm pretty sure, to now I'm not sure, it could be anything. And then as of yesterday, it was I'm 95. Now, a guy like Jeremiah is not going to always get it right, but for him to say he's 95% sure, that's really putting yourself out there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was just easy for me to dismiss so much stuff because I just couldn't wrap my head around it. And I still really can't wrap my head around it. So it was easy for me to dismiss it and to just be like, okay, they're reading the tea leaves wrong. But I was reading the tea leaves wrong.
And by the way, this is like a former certain writer on the Jets beat who said there was 100%. It was 100% guaranteed, or 150%, or whatever it was, that a certain thing wasn't going to happen. That you
I'm
actually
not
said
the Jets for me being wrong. I'm not, that's what he did, right? They went and they didn't sign him.
No. Well, that was a different thing. I'm talking about the thing with McCagnon getting fired. If you recall, it was you, Lombardi, and Pauline had that one.
Yep.
And this gentleman was swearing on a stack of Bibles that there's absolutely no way it was going to happen. It was 150% false, or whatever it was. And then obviously wound up happening. I think sometimes you got to, maybe pull it back a little bit. But the Jets are now 8 picks away. Man, I'll tell you, I think if they get Mekhi Lemon at 16, it might ease some of the people that are not happy with the Bailey pick. We'll see. Jordan Tyson's still on the board. Man, I'll tell you, wide receiver or not, Caleb Downs to me is a pretty I mean, I don't think he's making it to 16. But unless there's a medical issue that we don't know about, if he somehow does, I don't see how you don't take him. Imagine, like, whatever you want to say about Bailey, Chris, if you had David Bailey and Caleb Downs in one night, I mean, that helps the defense an enormous amount.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Again, Caleb Downs is obviously positional value, all that stuff we know. I talked about it. Jeremiah Love, probably the highest grade in the class. Caleb Downs is right there. Like he's going to be right there. It's just positional value of it. And I used to write that off a lot when I was real young, and then I didn't write it off as much. And now my theory on drafting players outside of the main positional values of the first round is you don't make a habit out of it. You don't build the plane out of it. You, like the Falcons took Bijan Robinson and they took Kyle Pitts. They did it like close. You can't do them close together. If once every 5 to 7 years you want Caleb Downs is there and you want to take a shot at him, cool. You can do that in certain drafts whatever.
Jordan Tyson, by the way, to the Saints.
Told
so
you.
There you go. So Jordan Tyson comes off
yes.
the board. Does this start? And now, by the way, Chris, an important point. You mentioned before the fact that the national guys had it on Bailey. Now, what is the one name at wide receiver that we've heard connected to the Jets more than any other over the last few weeks that we've said, well, it's been out there so much that you almost think it can't be real, and that's Omar Cooper Jr. And now that we've seen that the Bailey stuff was true, it makes you wonder if the Cooper stuff is true too.
Well, John, so when you first started saying that, I was like, because the last couple of days I've seen a lot of Mekhi Lemon with the Jets.
Right, but that one is.
No, I know.
But we haven't heard.
I'm just
We
saying.
haven't heard the Jets love them. Yeah, we haven't heard the Jets love Lemon. Yeah.
2 weeks ago, almost every mock you saw, Cooper Jr. was going at 16.
I think the reason that Lemon, I think what happened though, it's a combination of two things. I don't think anybody has said the Jets love Lemon. What I think has happened is I think people are starting to think that he could be there at 16, whereas they didn't think that before. And so if he's there at 16, they think they'd take him. But you haven't heard a lot of reports about the Jets love Mekhi. In fact, I don't think I've read one thing that connects the Jets specifically to Lemon, like, oh, they were super impressed with him or this or that. We've heard mostly that they really love Omar Cooper Jr. and then that's the guy that they've been connected to. So I'm curious if that's true. I'm also curious if maybe the Jets didn't think they were going to get Lemon, and maybe if he's there now, they would take him. Or maybe, look, I guarantee you there are going to be several teams, maybe a lot of them, that have Cooper ranked ahead of Lemon. I think there would be teams that have Boston and Concepcion ranked ahead of Lemon and ranked ahead of Cooper. And I think there's going to be a different ranking with all these guys. Jordan Tyson, I am sure that there are teams that didn't want to touch him because of the injuries. And then there are teams that think he's going to be a tremendous talent. So it's all very, very different, especially a year like this. By the way, the Browns pick is in. I'm going to say it's an offensive lineman, which I think is the smart play.
It would be the first one taken so far.
No well, that's why
linemen have gone yet. So I know, but this is what I was saying was going to happen. There's not going to be one early. And then in the middle, that's, again, really look out for that 16. That if the Jets want to try to trade down and get a third, pick up some extra picks, I think that's super in play here because nobody's gone off the board yet from offensive line. And we know there's 10 teams at least that want to try to find an offensive lineman in the first round.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they'll get it. Combination's not going to work. But we know there's a ton of teams. Teams are going to start trying to wheel and deal now.
Well, that might help the Jets in one of two ways. It could either produce a run on offensive linemen that...
Do the Browns, we got 2 receivers gone. So do the Browns say, hey, we need to get a receiver, no offensive lineman yet, we'll get one with our second first-round pick? Because they still have another first-round pick. So they could wait and still have a good chance to get an offensive lineman they and get this receiver they like.
Well, yeah, like my thing with the Jets here is that I think it can, if there's a run on tackles here, and Jim Coburn is jumping in right now. If there's a run on tackles here, it helps the Jets because either it pushes a player down to them potentially that they want, or it might induce somebody to trade up with them at number 16 and they can slide back and get some value there. Jim, if you can hear me, by the way, go ahead and unmute your camera and your microphone and you'll be in the discussion here. I wanted to bring you in to talk about this. And Jim, I if you can hear me at the moment, I see you now. Okay. And I hear you. Well, now the camera went off again, but I know you can hear me at least. So Jim, whether your camera's working or not, I'm not sure. But when we talked, you talked about the analytics and the tape. You had Bailey as the guy. You thought he was the clear choice over Arvell Reese. can you talk a little bit about that now that the Jets have made that decision? All right, I guess Jim's not hearing us right now. So Jim, when you do hear us, give me a heads up. But for now, I will say Jim had the Jets taking or thought that they should take David Bailey and thought he was the best defensive player in the draft as far as a guy that can make an impact as a pass rusher. So now, as the Browns, by the way, get in their pick, I still think it's going to be lineman, and it is. It's Spencer Fano. So maybe they were worried about the injury with Mawanoa, but the thing with Fano that's good is that Fano can play guard or tackle. I think he'll probably play tackle, but he's got that AVT capability where he can do a little bit of both here. So that makes a lot of sense. They traded out of they could also take Mawanoa here too, Chris, if they wanted to go that route. I mean, I don't know how worried they are about the injury.
Or the Giants could really they could do what we were dreaming about, where they could do what I said would make me become the new Fireman Ed.
Oh yeah.
I was joking with Scott about this a lot. I kept saying, take Arvell Reese, and if Caleb Downs falls to 16, and then I will become the new Fireman Ed. You get Arvell Reese and Caleb Downs, and I will be sitting there.
Oh man, listen, Brick City Will coming in here and saying, could you imagine if the Giants troll the Jets and take Mekhi Lemon? Reese and Lemon is the draft that a lot of Jets fans wanted. So if the Giants do that, then I think a lot of Jets. I mean, look, they could. I think
they could.
I think it makes more. Look, I think the Tyson stuff was smoke. They were putting it out there. I think they wanted a defensive player, and I think they wanted an offensive lineman.
I've heard this for months. They've wanted offense and defense. They wanted.
Yeah, both. Well, I mean, right, and I mean, look, if you're the Giants,
it could change. But that's
you got the best. Giants got the best of both worlds. They got a guy that could be a premium position guy, and it's Francis Mawanoa for the Giants. So, by the way, the Mawanoa brothers can hang out at Christmas time and Thanksgiving pretty easily. They both are going to be living in New York now, or New Jersey, wherever they choose to live. So, I like that I love that for the Giants. Mawanoa at 10, Arvell Reese at 5. You've got yourself a potential franchise tackle and a game wreck. And here's the thing, right? I know the Giants are very well stocked at pass rusher, but let's remember something. They just traded Dexter Lawrence. They're looking to deal Kayvon Thibodeau, and he's probably not long for the Giants. Reese can do so many things back there, so he gives you the versatility of off-ball linebacker too. So I think this is really good. I mean, look, I got to give credit where it's due. I think Harbaugh and company did really well. Look, if you told me that you were trading Dexter Lawrence at 28 years old, making $30 million for rookie contract Francis Mawanoa, I think that's a good deal for the Giants.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, again, anytime you talk about somebody that big and a herniated disc right away, that's going to scare me a little bit. But like I always say to you, I have to trust doctors. I'm not a doctor and I can't see. And even if I could see, I wouldn't know what it means. So we just have to trust that these billion-dollar organizations.
Wait a second. Dallas is on the clock now. They've moved from 20 to 11.
They flipped with Miami.
I wonder if this is take Caleb Downs and then at 12, because their defense was horrendous. So you got to figure, unless they traded George Pickens in this deal, and then they're taking a wide receiver. But I don't know what they did.
He just signed the tag. If Delaney,
right, but he had to sign the tag to be traded, though.
All right, that's true. That's fair. But if Delane was still on the board, I'd think maybe they'd go there. But I think they're going Caleb Downs. It has to be.
Okay. So I was confused. I'm sorry. They didn't trade up from 20. They just moved up a spot with Miami.
Yeah, they just.
So I gotta assume. I'm guessing it's Downs, but at the same time, was Miami going to pick a defensive player? I would have thought they'd pick offense. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
By the way, Miami got 177 and 180.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Wow, that's not bad. So that's what, 2 6th-round picks?
just to move up one spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I really like it. Is Jim, can you hear us now?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Jim, I got you. Yeah, you're coming in a little low, but that's okay. I was
Okay.
saying before you were on the show and you talked about why you thought David Bailey should be the pick at 2. Talk to me a little bit now about Bailey and why you thought that, and then also who do you compare him to from an analytics standpoint? Some people have said Aiden Hutchinson. I don't see that at all. Others have said Nick Benito. I'm not so sure about that. Do you have a comparison in mind?
Well, sure. I think in terms of David Bailey, I think just to answer the first question about the Jets, I think it really comes down to them wanting a more polished pass rusher, because that's the biggest thing about Arvell Reese is he's kind of like, if for a gardening analogy, when you plant seeds, they get their true leaves coming in first. They got the little seedling leaves, and then you got the true leaves after that to kind of see what it is. And that's the thing about Arvell Reese. He isn't quite fully developed as a player yet. So you're kind of like, okay, do I take this guy that could become a monster if we get the right coaching staff around him? Or do we take the guy who already has the sort of development to just be put in instantly and get some production out of it? So, I mean, it kind of goes either way. I mean, based on data, they're very similar prospects, from a just not from a production standpoint, but just athletically speaking, they're very similar. They're both about 6'4", 240 to 50 pounds. Both ran 4.4. Well, Reese ran 4.46 and Bailey ran 4.5, but they're very similar from that perspective. But I think Bailey, there's just more of that established production. And I think that the best analogy I can make for it is it's sort of like in the Aiden Hutchinson, Devon Walker draft where, Walker had the more tools.
Right.
He was more of the athletic freak than Hutchinson, but Hutchinson was just more of a developed pass rusher. So they're kind of, again, you might wreck your brain over it for a while, but it just, I think if you're the Jets and you're like, okay, who do we pick here? Do we pick the guy that may not be that guy as a rookie, or do we pick the guy that instantly can get you, 10 to 12 sacks in year one? Which I think Bailey has the potential to do that based on this data.
How concerned are you over the run defense? I've said that I don't think his run defense is as bad as the harshest critics have said. I think it's okay, but I also think that odds are it's only going to be okay. How much of a concern would that be for you?
It's not that much of a concern for me. I think in terms of just the production he was able to put up, he was a really great run defender. He had 97 percentile forced fumble market share as well. So he's someone who can, get his hands on the ball and pill it out. So he's not and neither Reese nor Bailey is like a 270 or 280, like a full size DN, sort of a hybrid 3-4 outside linebacker type for him. And I think, yes, you can be concerned about that aspect of it, but what he does so well is getting to the quarterback. And, I think from that perspective, I think he would be, pretty solid from that perspective.
What comp do you have? Like I said, some people have said Nick Benito. Not sure that I see that. Others have said Brian Burns. You've heard some people try and compare him to Aiden Hutchinson. Again, I don't really see that one so much. What do you think?
I think in terms of what he is, I don't really like compare. General managers like comparisons. Okay, coaches like comparisons because you're selling somebody, right? You're like, hey, take this.
Well, and to be fair, also, Jim,
Yeah.
casual fans like it because it helps them conceptualize what a guy is. If you're somebody that doesn't watch a lot of college football, if you're somebody that doesn't really know a lot about these players, if I tell you, okay, he kind of reminds me of player A, it gives you a visualization and a way to kind of understand what that player's capability may be in a way that comes across to an average fan. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. I mean, I totally get that. I think it, in terms of, okay, so if you really want a database comparison, just based on the numbers, not based on anything else, he's kind of in between, say, a DeMarcus Ware and a TJ Watt from a size perspective. So if you're just talking about him like his size, being about 6'4", 250 pounds. Yeah. And then from, say, a production standpoint, you kind of are in that same, honestly, you're kind of in that same realm as well, except, Ware was a little bit less polished of a prospect coming out of Troy compared to what he was able to do at Dallas, because he kind of got coached up a lot, actually.
By the way, Caleb Downs to the Cowboys, they've got to be thrilled with that. They've got to be thrilled with that.
Have to be.
To get him at number 11. I know, and shout out to my friend Winston, huge Cowboys fan. He was saying for months that he would do handstands. He didn't expect Downs to come anywhere near. He wanted them to trade up for him. So congrats, Winston. You got to be thrilled right now. Anyway, Jim, I'm sorry. Continue.
Oh, no, that's great. Yeah. Downs, great pick for them. But yeah, I think in terms of the highest upside, right? So if you're just looking at it from a data perspective, what you hope for him to be would be like a TJ Watt, DeMarcus Ware type pass rusher.
Sure.
And you've seen the hand usage on film. At least, you've seen those aspects of it. Yes, the run defense is, there are some things that critics will have about that. But I think that's sort of what you're looking at, a Will Anderson Jr. type in terms of his production. That's what he is, especially for where he was picked at. Now, again, there is the potential that, he could be, I know Jets fans are going to be, Aaron Maben, in terms of size perspective.
But wasn't Aaron Maben like 225 pounds or something though? Or am I crazy? Am I misremembering?
He's 249 pounds.
Was he really?
At the combine? At the combine, wow. He might have ate a bunch of cheeseburgers. Like grabbed about 2 bags of cheeseburgers before he went there. For some reason,
I thought I remembered him being undersized. But okay, wow. I guess I remembered it wrong.
But I will say this: the issue with Aaron Maben was that he had a below average speed score for his size. He was about 4.78, which Bailey's not that. He's about 4.5. And then also, in terms of short shoulder 3-cone, Maben had a 4.38 and a 7.52. So that was like a major red flag, obviously, that, they kind of ignored a little bit, at least for the Bills. But right. Yeah, that's I would say, again, I'm not trying to be wishful thinking here or anything else like that, but based on the data where he was selected and based on the comps for him, based on his production and everything, you expect him, I would say, based on data, to be a TJ Watt, DeMarcus Ware, John Abraham type pass rusher. You would expect that. That's your expectation, at least.
Look, if he can be John Abraham, we all remember how good John Abraham was. If he could be John Abraham or DeMarcus Ware or, obviously TJ Watt, I think Jets fans would be very pleased with that. Nick Bonito, if he could be Nick Bonito, I think Jets fans would be very pleased with that. That's the question. And you wonder about his stiffness. And, when he wins with that first step, he can be deadly. But when he doesn't win with that first step, sometimes it's a little, it gets dicey. Sometimes he gives up a little bit, or he doesn't really have the power to come through. How much does that worry you, Jim?
Well, that's the thing. He didn't do a short shoulder 3-cone. So, incomplete athletic profile, which is common now. Right. You'll have players who didn't do anything at the combine. I think I tweeted out.
You brought that up, Jim, and I wonder if that is part of why he's sliding now. He didn't do any athletic testing whatsoever.
Yeah, and I think some of it is, NFL teams will give players promise rings, as Bill Carroll, who was a former colleague of mine, he used to say, teams would give him like, we're absolutely going to take you in the top 10 or whatever. And then they just go, I'm going in the top 10. And then they end up, in day 2, which I'm not saying Ruben Bain's going to be in day 2. Right. But I think in terms of Bain, I think it has been a trend where players don't do the athletic testing. And again, some people, casual fans, are like, hey, it doesn't matter. Like, the testing is stupid and nobody cares about it. And, it's just underwear Olympics. But at the same time, that Bailey didn't do the short shoulder 3-cone. So again, if you have questions of stiffness on film with him, there isn't anything to really refute that from a data perspective. Again, he's very explosive, very fast, but you don't have anything to, kind of give you that impact. I think there are players who get away with it. So like Terrell Suggs, for example, was a little bit stiff in terms of, but he had great, good explosiveness and good speed for his size. So, but
that's a decent comparison too. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's kind of what you're looking at there with him.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, if he can be anything close to what you're describing, then I think Jets fans will get over it pretty quickly. The question is whether he can hit that. The Dolphins are about to pick, by the way, and they have taken Caden Proctor. Makes sense to me. They needed a tackle. I had thought that they would go with Fano or Mawanoa here. Those guys were both gone. Proctor goes here. So now you got to wonder, do the Lions and teams like that get a little itchy here? Because Monroe Freeling is still there. And Blake Miller, I think Blake Miller may wind up going a little higher than we expected as well.
I think the Lions go after him now because the talk was that the Lions wanted Proctor. That was
yeah,
everything I was hearing, and then Blake Miller was the number 2 guy. So
yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, now you look at this. By the way, Vega Awane still on the board. Makai Lemon still on the board. I think there's a good chance one of those two makes it to the Jets, and if they do, I think that should be the pick. But we'll see. Jim, as we get ready for the Jets to pick at 16, we know who's been taken already. What are you looking at data wise in terms of what you think the Jets should do here, based on who's still on the board as of right now? The Rams pick is in, by the way. So we don't know what it is yet, or at least we don't watching on TV. And I'm not going to be one of those guys that looks ahead. I don't want to play spoiler. We don't do that on this stream. But tell me, Jim, as of bearing in mind the guys that have come off the board so far, who are some of the guys you think from a data and analytics perspective, and then also obviously with the Jets' need, who do you think makes sense here?
I think there's a plethora of, I mean, obviously offensive positions. You could get a wide receiver, although Makai, I mean, I like Makai. I just don't think you take a slot receiver in the first round. I think, you got to get a guy who more so has like a bigger repertoire of things that you kind of would ask him to do. I think in terms of, I mean, some people have had tight end there, Kenyon Sadiq, but I think he's a little bit better of an athlete than actual tight end. He's not really full size tight end.
Agreed.
So there's kind of stuff there. I mean, left guard. I mean, if Vega's there, if you're trying to get at that guard spot, that might be a good selection for him if he falls there, which he might, because guards typically are devalued. But the Jets definitely have a need there. And then I think in terms of maybe cornerback, there might be some cornerbacks that drop there. I know Chris Johnson from San Diego State. People have given him a lot of praise. Based on his data, there is some things to like about there as well, or Avion Terrell, but or even at safety. I mean, you get a Dylan, Thieneman from Oregon. He has some good overall traits, or Emmanuel, McWarren. So there's either you go defense again or you go offense. I think offensively they do have a lot of needs there, especially at the wide receiver tight end position. I just don't think the value for I think you'd be reaching a little bit if you take those guys at 16. For them.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ioane and Lemon make a lot of sense if one of them's there at 16. I will say though, I think Lemon can play a little on the outside, and I also am fine with him being primarily in the slot. I just think he's one of those guys that. And Jim, I'm curious what your data says on this, but I'd be surprised. The two receivers coming in this draft that I said I'd be outright surprised if they weren't at least good were Tate and Lemon. Now, I didn't necessarily think they'd be superstars, but I thought they were both relatively safe from a production standpoint. Is that how you see it based on what you're looking at?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's in terms of the wide receivers in this class, Lemon is easily, I would say, wide receiver probably 2 to 3. I mean, it kind of, Tyson would be kind of 1 based on just his pure data. If you take the injury stuff out of it and you don't worry about that, then Tyson would be kind of the number 1 guy based on his production. But then past him, it's kind of a debate between not Tyson, but between Lemon and Casey Concepcion actually, and then Tate was sort of like wide receiver 4 in that sort of area based on his production traits, and that's just because he was not the most productive player for obvious reasons. Jeremiah Smith obviously is there, so he's kind of like a high number 2 guy is what his data says about him, but hopefully he develops into something more than that, which, I mean, if you're going to take a guy at 4, you would hope he, is your top wide receiver. So,
well, yeah. And obviously to be fair to Tate, any receiver in the country would have been a number 2 receiver playing with Jeremiah Smith. So we have to keep that in mind. But I do agree with you. I think Carnell Tate profiles more as a high end 2. In most drafts, I think that's not the best at number 4, but I think this draft it's a little bit different. Because when you're looking at the data, Jim, and Chris and I were talking about this before, it just seems like all the best players are at non-premium positions, and all the premium position guys are really more tier 2 than tier 1. Like, I don't see David Bailey as a Myles Garrett, uh, Nick Bosa, Von Miller type pass rusher, right? I don't see Carnell Tate as a Calvin Johnson, Jamar Chase, Julio Jones, Mike Evans type. Like guys that are on that absolute tier, the top tier. So it seems to me that your expectations for a guy like Tate, they're a lot lower than they would be for a wide receiver picked at number 4 most years, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, Tate, based on his data, I mean, T. Higgins was kind of the best comparison, in terms of like how he actually produced in college, of course. And, I think in terms of like this class, there is a lot of offensive line talent. Of course, there's a lot of film. So, like the technique aspect of it, I think a lot of offensive line coaches kind of are scratching their heads with this class a little bit, with some of the players, because they have the size. They have the size, they have the athleticism traits for the position. It's just that they do have a lot of inconsistencies and sort of the mental aspects of the position. That's kind of hurting them, or they got weight issues, or I mean that's kind of what this class is. There's a lot of players who kind of they hit a lot of the boxes, but they also aren't hitting some other boxes that you kind of wish that they hit. Like, for example, with David Bailey, like we talked about, not doing agility testing, or Bain Jr. having short arms and also not testing at all, or even Delane. Delane was a top 6 cornerback, but his physical metrics line up more as a nickel corner. He's not like a 32-inch arm length corner. He's not like a Darrell Revis or, that type of a player, or
Ross
Charles
Gardner.
Woodson. Yeah. Now, is he going to be a good player? Absolutely. I think he's going to be a solid, defensive back. But there's stuff that isn't matching up. Or Sonny Styles in terms of like physical, kind of tear your head off type of linebacker. That's not what he is. He's athletic. He can cover. But he's not exactly, so again, that's what it is there's a lot of players who have a lot of really great traits. It's just they're not hitting all those things out of the box, which is what,
Now,
coaches want.
Jim, do we think Mansour Delane winds up being the replacement for Trent McDuffie? Is that what the Chiefs were thinking?
That's what they expect him to be. I don't think he has quite the same length as McDuffie, in terms of like what they want him to do. But again, he does kind of fit that role as sort of like a nickel, kind of put him anywhere in your defense. So I think from that perspective, that's definitely what they're kind of thinking there with him.
The Rams pick about to be announced. So let's see who it. Oh my goodness. This is a bombshell. Ty Simpson at 13 to the Rams. That's a surprise. So you got to give it to Dan Orlovsky. He stood on an island and he told you that Ty Simpson was a guy that should be picked high in the first round. And look, I'll be honest, I'm surprised here. Simpson doesn't seem like a Sean McVay quarterback to me. McVay likes the guys that have tremendous physical tools and upside, guys that are Simpson. Well, listen, he must know that Stafford is probably going to retire at the end of the year, and he thinks Simpson can sit for a year behind Stafford, and this is the guy. And what I'm assuming is the way he probably looks at it is that the other first rounder that he had that he traded away, he got a guy that can help win now. So he probably feels like instead of taking Simpson at 29 or whatever, he could do it here at 13, sit him behind Matthew Stafford. Now, listen, not a pick I'd make. I would have gone with somebody to help them win right away, and I'm not a believer in Simpson. But I will say this. I'm not one in appeals to authority, but Sean McVay would know a thing or two. So I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt here in a way that I wouldn't give most people. Chris, I want to go to you first, and then Jim, I want to hear what you have to say from a data and analytics standpoint, because look, data analytics wise, I don't think there's a huge case for him. Film wise, you really have to believe in those first 8 or 9 games. And again, 6'1", barely over 200 pounds. He's an okay athlete. He's got an okay arm. Smart kid, but 24 years old, only 15 starts. A lot of red flags here, but again, I guess if anybody has earned the right to take a stab like this, it'd be Sean McVay.
But first, Les Snead was just talking the other day. He said they've made a lot of progress on a contract extension with Stafford. He just volunteered that the other day.
Well, maybe he lied.
Maybe he lied, obviously.
Yeah.
But it makes all the sense in the world that they would make progress with Matthew Stafford, because that last year sure didn't look like a guy that's like, on his way out the door. Right. I know the back problems. I know the age. I know all. So I know, but last year he performed really well, and he seemed to enjoy playing. So like you said, I am not going to sit here and question Sean McVay evaluation.
I will say that I don't agree with it, but I will also say that McVay has more than earned the right to do what he wants.
But I'm still going to sit here and say, I don't know why, after the way that last year played out, and you trade, you get enough, you trade the cornerback for the cornerbacks, you're doing all this work to gear up and load for this, and then you use the 13th pick on a quarterback, and now we've talked about this a lot. The older I get, is when the sport of football, especially, I'm a size queen, and especially at a quarterback, it's not even about the performance part of it. I love Baker Mayfield, but he's always getting hurt, and then he's always playing through the injury, and he's always struggling.
Brock Purdy gets hurt a lot too.
Brock, I told you the other day, I think Brock Purdy is the absolute ceiling for Ty Simpson.
Yeah.
And I would, if you could tell me you're going to give me Brock Purdy without the injury concerns, sign me up. But he gets hurt a lot, and then he plays through it, and he kind of sucks when he has to play through it, and then your season's gone. And that's going to happen. Baker Mayfield, Brock Purdy, Ty Simpson, they're going to miss 2 to 5 or be hurt. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, they play through injuries and they're still awesome. Most other quarterbacks are not. So if you're going to get hurt consistently, I'm out. That's it. I'm out.
By the way, as the Ravens are about to make a pick, Adam Schefter reporting that the Rams were very confident in this pick. They decided that it was a rare opportunity to get a quarterback at 13 when they normally don't pick that high. And they called Matthew Stafford today to let him know that they were going to make this pick. So it's the opposite of what the Falcons did with Kirk Cousins and Mike Penix. So as the Ravens, this feels like a Vega Ioane spot, doesn't it? The Ravens, doesn't this feel like a, let's see, and it is. It's Vega Ioane, of course. Of course it's Vega
With the
Ioane.
way the board fell, I know everyone was penciling this in, and I get it.
Yeah.
But it's an easy dot to connect, but they have so many other needs. I thought that there were so many other directions they could have gone. But
their whole line needed help too, No, Michael, did you want to say something before we go back to Jim?
Me?
Yeah. Did you say?
Yeah,
did you want to say something?
I think you mentioned a contract extension for Stafford. I think it's going to be Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love type of situation where he sits for multiple seasons.
I mean, that would be nuts, especially considering the fact that he's already 24 years old. But I mean, if that's what they want to do, fine, I guess. Jim, with
you
that, I want
gotta
to bring
think
you
they're
back.
hoping to get at least 2 more years out of Stafford. With the way he was an MVP last year.
No, I
They're
know,
not
but
trying to kick him out the door. He was the MVP
no,
of
I
the
know,
league.
but why are you picking a 24-year-old? I don't know, Jim.
But he
I
was
want
the
to.
MVP of the league just last
Yeah.
year.
Chris, you're missing what I'm saying. If that's the case, then what I'm saying is it makes no sense to pick a 24-year-old quarterback at 13. That's all I'm
I
saying.
get it. I get it
That's
all,
all I'm
but
saying.
none of it makes sense. This is what
No, I
I'm
get it.
saying.
Well, I want to bring in Jim because I have a feeling he's not gonna love it either from a data and analytics standpoint. Jim, talk to me here because if I recall correctly, the data and analytics weren't all that kind to Ty Simpson, right?
Well, the biggest issue with Ty Simpson is really that he only has 1 year worth of starts. You don't really know what he is. And I forgot which analyst said that, but it actually makes a lot of sense. Like, you don't know what he is. You have
Yeah.
one sample size, 1 year, that's it. Based on his data, if you just look at him from a size perspective, because we're talking about size here, the quarterbacks that he comps to based on his size in the first round are guys like Baker Mayfield, which of course was just mentioned, Caleb Williams, Cade McNown at UCLA, Michael
Right.
Vick, Johnny Manziel, Kyler Murray, Jaden Daniels, and Bryce Young. And I think what worries me about Ty Simpson is more so about what he was able to do from a college efficiency standpoint, because most really good NFL quarterbacks do well in college in terms of their red zone production and their third down passing production. Simpson was about a 77 guy when it came to red zone production and efficiency. And then on third down, he was about a 61 percentile guy. Most NFL, passers, at least since 2016, were in the 90 to 80 percentile range, 80 to 90 percentile range in terms of that. So that's kind of the concern with him. And he's also not really that mobile of a quarterback. He had about a 26 out of 100 mobile quarterback score, which is a composite score. It tells you, how much of the rushing offense he made up. He's not a dual threat, in terms of that. I think the only thing I could really say about Ty Simpson is he has a lot more in common with, Stetson Bennett, who's already on the roster, than he does
Yeah.
Matthew Stafford in terms of what Stafford is coming out of college as well, out of Georgia. So
Well, and what's
yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jim. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, but I just, again, it's the Rams. They're going to do what they're going to do, but I think this is a tremendous reach. I think Simpson, based on just as a data analytics guy, he's like a fourth round pick. He's like a Stetson Bennett type quarterback, not a first round pick. Yeah, of course, he is one, but I'm very interested to see what happens with Ty Simpson, because I think, from a film perspective, it's all over the place. This isn't like a Josh Allen, because again, I don't know if you were there, but I was deriding Josh Allen, like the hate. I don't want to say
Yeah.
hate,
Oh, yeah.
just the
Jim,
data
Jim,
hate.
don't forget you came on Play Like a Jet and talked about that.
Yeah, the data hate, I would say, for Josh Allen was very high, but
Yeah.
there was some knowledge and some things I didn't see, which is why, I always, at least sometimes, I try to tell people, there's a lot more data things that I don't know because I haven't discovered it yet, or somebody hasn't, discovered it yet. But the biggest thing I missed with Josh Allen is that, he had elite size, elite athleticism for his size, but he also was very good in terms of red zone production and third down production at Wyoming. It's just things like throwing a screen pass for things he struggled with on film. Just different things that were inconsistent at Wyoming. So it was like the big time plays he was really great at. It's just the little things he was not. And I just kind of completely, was like, this guy's not going to make it. He's bad. But again, when you think about it, that's the difference here is with Simpson is the things that are really important to winning football games: third down production, red zone production. He's mid tier. And then of course you look at it's only 1 year worth of production, and then you just go, wow, this is a big risk of a pick.
Well, and the other thing, Jim, I think is that most of the guys you talked about, and Allen would fall in this category too, even the guys that are smaller, the ones that have been successful are the guys that are elite athletes. Caleb Williams, we've seen, he's a special athlete at quarterback.
Hockey,
Kyler
sick.
Murray, to the extent that he's been a quality NFL starter at points, is an elite. Michael Vick, some of the guys that you read off, like very few of them that aren't top tier athletes with that size, weight profile, and all that. By the way, the Bucks are about to pick, which would put the Jets on the clock. Is this where Reuben Bain finally goes? And if not, do the Jets take Reuben Bain at 16 and double up at pass rusher? And it is Reuben Bain. Reuben Bain stays in Florida. I like that pick for Todd Bowles. I think that's a good one. At 15, I think Bain in the top 5
Better
was
than
too much.
Mesidor.
At 15, I like it. It's a good pick.
Yeah,
So
everyone was penciling in Mesidor for them. I like Bain way more than Mesidor for him.
well, yeah, because Mesidor's 25 years old and he's
Yeah.
hurt too much. So that's. But Jim, I think, correct me if I'm wrong. That's really the issue here is that guys that are Simpson's age have his athletic profile, his lack of production, all of that. It's very rare that that's going to work. I mean, I'm not saying it can't. And obviously, Sean McVay knows more than we do, so maybe he sees something we don't. But it just feels like there are a lot of data outliers he would have to overcome to become successful, right?
Well, yeah, and I think when I originally did an article on Ty Simpson, because there was the Orlovsky stuff kind of, was kind of pushing it a little bit, which obviously he was proven to be right. There was a GM that had him as a first rounder, but I think you have to kind of the two main comparisons was one Matt Barkley from USC. And then the other one was the first round pick that the Cleveland Browns took. They're really, really old. Again, I'm not trying to say that Ty Simpson is an old man or anything, but
you're talking about the guy who's like 28 years old from Oklahoma State, Brandon Wenke, right?
Yes, yeah,
Chris
yeah.
No, Brandon. What was his last name?
Whedon.
Brandon Whedon. I
Whedon.
confused him with Chris Wenke, the Florida State quarterback.
They all had similar profiles in terms of not being very good in terms of their mobile quarterback score. Again, it's a composite score, in terms of their ability to rush with the football. But they did have one really good season, at least with Whedon, one really great season at Oklahoma State at an older age.
Right.
And then, of course, you look at Matt Barkley and his career at USC, which, again, Matt Barkley was solid, I mean, at USC, but obviously he didn't become, a great NFL quarterback, at least, a decent backup, according to who you talk to. But I think Simpson he's with those types of guys. And like you said, one of these things is not like the others, right? I mean, you look at these guys, like even Mayfield is more mobile than a Simpson, like he gives you a little extra. Again, I'm not saying he's like Michael Vick or anything, but he gives you a little extra oomph to get some extra yards, which Simpson doesn't really. Everything is going to be dependent on him doing that. And I think the biggest issue I have with Simpson is, at least how people talk about him, is they talk about, well, he's going to be like Tom Brady. Well, if he's going to be like Tom Brady, then he has to be picked in day 3. If he's going to be the next Joe Montana, Joe Montana was actually a very mobile quarterback at Notre Dame. I mean, he was a 90 percentile guy, at Notre Dame. So that isn't quite there. So it's, again, I'm not, as a data guy, I just go, wow, like this is a really risky. That's the only thing I really say. It's a very risky selection.
And obviously, Joe Montana and Tom Brady were both much bigger guys than Ty Simpson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's just a very risky pick. That's all I can really say.
No, I agree. It's a weird one. Again, Sean McVay obviously has some plan here, and I'm not going to go against him. If anybody could make this work, although, look, we said this with Kyle Shanahan when he took Trey Lance, and look what happened there. A little bit different, obviously, because Trey Lance, that was a guy that went to a small school and didn't play very many games. I mean, that part of it is similar, but he traits weren't Trey Lance's problem. Trey Lance had elite traits. He just couldn't put it all together. With Simpson, not the case. Simpson, like we said,
it was a lack of playing football problem, Trey Lance. It contributed to it though,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
all
for
the
sure.
injuries, he didn't get a lot of
Yeah,
playing time in college.
yeah,
And
for sure.
then he started off his pro career hurt, and then couldn't get on the field. So like the injuries, like Scott, I was a believer in Trey Lance, and I was very much the point
Oh
I was going to
no!
take him.
Wow, the Jets just threw a huge curveball. A lot of Jets fans are not going to like this. Kenyon Sadiq at number 16. Ah, boy, I'll be honest, man. I don't love this draft so far for the Jets. Man, the problem
Just
with Kenyon
fire
Sadiq,
everyone out.
I think, Jim, you said it before. I don't think he can really be an inline blocker, and he's not really a route runner. So what is he? I mean, he's an athlete. We know that, but like man, this is wow. I can't. This is a stunner. I'm very surprised they did this. I would have thought they'd go wide receiver here. Man, I don't like it. I mean, to me, if you're picking a tight end at 16, you've got to be getting a guy like, look, Colston Loveland, even Tyler Warren, obviously Brock Bowers. Those were guys like, man, I said last year I thought Colston Loveland was the better tight end, and look at what he ended up doing. And then Tyler Warren, who wasn't, I don't think as good as Colston Loveland, had a really nice year in Indianapolis last year. We know what Brock Bowers might be the best tight end in the league at this point, right? When he's healthy. I don't know with Kenyon Sadiq. I don't get this. I mean, he's a superb athlete for sure for a tight end. But Jim, you said it before. I don't know that he's physical enough to really, to be a difference maker as an inline blocker. His route running is not great. I mean, man, I don't know. Man, I'll be honest. I thought, it's funny. My friend Gordon Damer, who's over at WFAN now, um, and he was at ESPN a really long time. He said the one thing you want to avoid, when you are a team like the Jets, and um you've been bad for a long time, don't color outside the lines. Don't try to get too creative. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Don't do anything that a smart team wouldn't do. And this move kind of feels like they're coloring outside the lines and they're trying to think outside the box. And that's not really where the Jets should be right now. The Jets should be in a spot where they are, Chris, you mentioned this, that they are looking to get 4 quality starters out of the top 50 guys that can. Now, look, I hope that 2, 3 years from now, or even at the end of next year, we are sitting here and we are having this conversation and we are saying, hey, David Bailey just had 12 sacks. Kenyon Sadiq is a top 5 tight end. I hope we're saying that. I'm not confident that we will be. I don't really like what the Jets did here. I think they could have gone with Mekhi Lemon. I think they could have, man, look, I guess the sales point here that they're going to make, I'll tell you right now, we're going to hear the same thing that we heard about Jackson Smith and Jigba when they passed on him. They're going to say he's slot only. We didn't think he was that good. We gave him a second round grade. That's what you heard about Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think we'll probably hear something similar. And what you're going to hear is we felt that Sadiq was a better offensive weapon than any of the receivers available. I don't see it that way. I think any of the receivers that we've talked about today that were still on the board, Lemon would have been my preference, but you've got Concepcion, you've got Cooper, even Denzel Boston. I think all of these guys made more sense. Maybe not at 16, but like I just, Chris, I want to go to you in a second, but first, Jim, you were just talking about Sadiq. Go ahead, talk a little bit more. The data seemed kind of shaky on him. And then what do you have as a comp for him?
Well, I think athletically speaking, so not about production though, because that's the big kind of sticking point with him as a tight end, and we can get into the physical measurements, but athlete wise, you are getting a Vernon Davis level athlete in terms of his size, speed, explosiveness profile. The difference is that Davis at Maryland was a 97, 99, 95 percentile production guy at Maryland, on top of being a really great athlete. Sadiq is more so production wise, I would say, kind of like Irv Smith, not junior, but the original Irv Smith from Notre Dame, or Al J. Crumpler at North Carolina. Solid production, but not really elite production. He does have a great age score. He's a younger prospect, so there's that kind of going for him. Kind of like in again, I'm not. He's nowhere near Brock Bowers in terms of his production. At Georgia, it's not really there. But I think athleticism wise, that's kind of what you're getting. You're getting like a Vernon Davis level athlete. Production wise, wasn't really the same. But you make a very good point about the size thing, which is, I think people don't realize that when it comes to these tight ends, these kind of smaller 6'3", 6'2" height tight ends, I guess. I always use the comparison. They're like a pocket-sized tight end. The move tight end types. The tight ends you put in your pocket, right, and you pull them out when you need them. I have not really seen that many offensive coordinators, because of the issue of the blocking, to really have them have like an offensive explosion at the next level. I mean, the closest thing to that maybe would be like Aaron Hernandez.
I was just going to say that. Patriots. Although that's a name we don't really want to bring up all that often, but yes,
I know we don't want to talk about that. I know. It's kind of like bringing up OJ Simpson.
But that was the name that came into my head. Yeah.
But Aaron Hernandez was much more productive from a market share perspective. So again, I'm not trying to hate on the pick. I think athleticism wise is great, but I just think tight end value wise is not, unless you're getting like a Tony Gonzalez or a Kellen Winslow from Missouri, or Kellen Winslow Jr. Yeah, unless you're getting that type of guy who just is knocking it out of the park production wise and athleticism wise, I don't think you take a guy this high. But again, maybe there's some data, like I said, some information that I just don't know, because I'm always learning new things every day. But that's all I can really say about it.
Yeah, no, I look, I think the same thing. I think the value at tight end is just, it's not there. If you're picking a tight end that high, it's got to be it. Look, I'll say this one more time. I hope I'm wrong. I truly do. As Blake Miller goes off the board, by the way, to the Lions. So I called that one. Everyone knew they were going to take a tackle there. So there's Blake Miller. Look, again, you said it, undersized. I don't think he's going to be effective. The player that I saw, and I'm curious, this will be funny to Jets fans, but the player that I saw Daniel Jeremiah compare him to, and I could see it because they're similar size, similar weight, height, speed, all that. Dustin Keller. Dustin Keller was a perfectly fine player, but you would never in 1,000 years draft Dustin. If I told you a tight end was Dustin Keller, you're not picking him at 16. There's no way. You might not pick him at 33 or 44. But you're certainly not picking him at 16. That's really who and I think it's a fair comparison. I hate to do that, though, because I really don't like doing the Jet comparisons because it feels lazy. It feels like, oh, well, let me compare him to a guy. Like, I love when every receiver with yak ability is Quincy Enunwa, right? Or every single cornerback that can cover is Darrelle Revis or whatever. Like, that's what they do.
That's next year.
Leonard
Moore.
That'll be Leonard Moore. Yeah. But I get it. I'm just saying, like, I don't like doing it for that reason. But the Keller comparison kind of feels right. Keller also couldn't block a lick. But look, there were games. Johnny Mitchell, by the way, there's another guy very similar. And he was a solid player for the Jets, but Johnny Mitchell also couldn't block for anything. So, like, you would see games where Dustin Keller would be a serious factor. I mean, look, remember, Brett Favre said to Dustin Keller in that one game when Keller had that big game, he said, "I wish I had you when I was younger," which is a hell of a compliment. But there were just too few of those games where he was a major difference maker. He just never became that kind of player, and you wonder if Sadiq can ever be that. He's not a great route runner, and he's not big enough to be a factor as a blocker. Caleb Banks. Oh, wow. I thought Joe Thurman. Wow. Well, listen. I'll say this: Caleb Banks is a very, very talented guy. The question for me is, I'm sure Jim would say the production, and then also, of course, the injuries are a major problem with Caleb Banks. But yeah, yeah, this is a crazy draft. The Kenyon Sadiq pick. Look, I'd love to say nice things about it. The nicest thing I can say is that Sadiq is a really good athlete, and I hope he proves me wrong. That's all I got. Michael, really quickly before Chris jumps in, and then we'll go back to Jim, and then we'll head out of here. I wanted to get to the contract, the money part of this. The other part of this is the tight end at 16. You're not going to get the same kind of value that you're going to get as picking a receiver at 16, right?
No. Especially if you're talking about just year one and you're talking about the cash value, because remember the signing bonus is paid in the first year. So he's going to be the third highest paid tight end in the league in his rookie season. So if you're talking about the cash value, year one, it depends on. He's getting 22.6 roughly total value, fully guaranteed. So it depends on what the Jets can get out of him, really. But he's gonna.
And by the way, this is a year after they took Mason Taylor in the second round. So, man, that's another thing here. Like, I guess they're going to play a lot of two tight ends. I mean, what? So does
remember last year, Sean McVay changed up his strategy. He went 11 and 13. Any chance the Jets are going to go 13?
Listen, I am not even the tiniest bit surprised that they drafted a tight end. Not even slightly. I expected them to draft a tight end. I thought in the 4th, 5th round.
Yeah. I did too, but not here.
I'm saying teams, a lot of teams, they want 3 like starter quality tight ends now. It's not super like surprising that they want another piece like this. It's the everything else about it. It's okay. First off, you guys listen to me for a while. Every year I do this. What do I do every year at the beginning of the draft cycle, Scott? What do I do every year? I fall in love with a tight end. Every single year, I fall in love with a tight end because I have this in my head. Yes, I understand positional value, but there's so few elite guys that if you can get an elite guy, I always want to get the elite guy. So I fall in love with Brock Bowers. I fall in love with Tyler Warren. I fall in love with Colston Loveland. I fell in love with Kenyon Sadiq during the season a little bit, watching it and at the combine. And then I went back and I watched the tape and all this, and it's not the same player. And it's not what I had in my head. And it's not there. And then the production's not there. The usage isn't there. I don't see this elite best tight end. And I'm only willing to take, again, I'm willing every so often I think it's okay once every 4 or 5 years to kind of ignore positional value. You just can't build the whole plane out of it. And Colston Loveland, okay, go for it. I don't see Kenyon Sadiq doing that. And there's the other part of this. Just take Mekhi Lemon then, because now you got the limited receiver. The thing I didn't like about Lemon is he's an awesome receiver what he does, but he's limited. I can't see him stretching the field, winning outside as much. I don't see Kenyon Sadiq doing that either. And I think I'd rather have the smaller Mekhi Lemon as the blocker, because Mekhi Lemon's an absolute dog, and I'm going to watch and do that. I think I would think you can do more things with a Lemon combination, and I'm closer to to Jim and agreeing that Lemon's not my ideal first rounder. I'd rather Concepcion, Omar Cooper, or Denzel Boston even over Makai Lemon, but I'd rather Makai Lemon over Kenyon Sadiq. I cannot wrap my head around this. I don't get the thought process. I really don't understand how you can look at this and then just be like, all right, of all the needs, we have all these needs. Let's get Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end, our third tight end. And I mean, again, listen, especially the way the board falls, there's a good chance one of those receivers will still be there at 33, but then, okay, tight end, then I mean, hell, I would have rather gone and reached for Chase Basantis here. Like, that's too high for Basantis. But
I mean, I would have just taken Makai Lemon. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, I would. I would.
I mean, the one thing I will say though about Makai Lemon, by the way, the Eagles just traded up to number 20, so I'm curious.
Right.
What I do wonder about Makai Lemon here, Chris, is if he keeps falling, there might be a lot more to those bad interviews than we originally thought. That's
there
the
might
thing.
be.
That's the thing I wonder about.
Let me just, Jim said before he didn't want to trash the pick, and I clearly have no problem trashing the pick. But just let me throw out some stuff, some good stuff here. And it's just pure testing numbers that I'm going to throw out here. But that's all I got for you. But 40-yard dash, 4.39, fastest ever.
Listen, he's an exceptional athlete for a tight end, but it's like Jim said, the problem is he's more like a jumbo receiver, and you're going to say, okay, we'll play him in the slot. The problem is he doesn't run good enough routes to play in the slot.
That's the issue. I don't like him as a blocker, and I don't get it. It doesn't.
I can think of 4
just
million
fire
reasons.
Everybody now. Just start the process now. I can't even. Last year the draft, I was like, all right, I'm giving Muji credit for this. Now it fell off at the middle rounds. But it was first draft, all right, did very good for those first couple picks. And now I'm looking at it and I'm just like, what's the point? Just get everybody out of the building to make sure that they don't just to make sure they don't do anything to mess up those picks for next year. Like
Chris, you've just turned into Randy Quaid's character in Major League 2, where he starts just like, F these guys, they're the worst, I hate them, and everybody's like, shut up, like, no, because like to begin the season he's like, they're gonna go to the World Series, and then all of a sudden they get on this losing streak and Rick Vaughn is throwing 78 miles an hour or whatever. This is the worst thing ever. So there's Makai Lemon, by the way. The Eagles, by the way, now he's gonna be good. The Eagles just got him, and by the way, he's going to be the replacement for A.J. Brown because they're going to trade A.J. Brown to the Patriots. Credit Diana Rossini for helping to make that happen. But that's apparently
not exactly a one-for-one replacement.
No. But Lemon is going to be the right. But I'm saying they picked him because they know they're trading A.J. Brown.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no. Well, I mean, listen, that's a good place to end it. It's crazy though because look. John Harbaugh went and got Arva. What's up, Michael?
I think there are 4 million reasons why the Jets aren't taking a wide receiver. And it's the other guy that's there right now. I think they believe in him. And that's the total value.
Get out of here. No, that's not. There's no way that they're passing on wide receivers because of A.D. Mitchell. Get out of here with that.
I'm just saying. I'm saying they might believe in him being the second wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'll be honest, and I want to go back. Look, I want to go back to what Chris said. If and I like A.D. Mitchell, I'm a Texas fan.
I don't agree with it. I don't agree with it.
I understand, but I want to go back to what Chris said. If the Jets are going into this thinking that A.D. Mitchell is their number 2. And they're not thinking, okay, if we're lucky, maybe he could get there someday. And they're not, and they're thinking that. Then I'm kind of with Chris. What are you guys doing? You're going into this draft and you're approaching it as if AD Mitchell's a proven number 2. You took a tight end that can't block or run routes, and at number 2, you bypassed a guy that could have been a special talent for an edge rusher that, granted, I think could be very good. Like, I hope that the stuff they're doing works out. I don't really like it. And look, it's like Chris said with Sadiq. You see the testing and you saw him flash at Oregon, and you wanted to look at the tape and say this guy is another whoever it is, Tyler Warren or Brock Bowers or whatever. But you didn't see that on his tape. You didn't. And his athletic testing was really good, but it's like Jim said, the history of these undersized guys to move tight ends. So look, Michael, if that's what they're trying to tell people, then I think they're badly mistaken, and it's another bad sign. It's like Chris just said. And the parallels are there too. You hate to be like this, but Joe Douglas did the same thing, collecting picks. I'm going to rebuild the whole thing, and then look at what happened. It all fell apart in front of him. You gotta be worried about it. Now, listen, if Kenyon Sadiq comes in at training camp and he's blowing guys away and he winds up being this great weapon, and David Bailey gets 12 or whatever, okay, great. Then we're wrong, and that's fine, and I'm happy to admit it. And I would rather be wrong and the team is good than me be right and it doesn't work out. But right now, I don't love it. I can't sit here and say that I do. I could give you the pluses of it, as Chris just did, which is mostly that he's an exceptional athlete and the potential is there for him to be a weapon. But man, again, you'd feel a little differently if he was raw like this and he was 6'5", 260 or whatever. But he's not. So it makes you very worried. Jim, last word to you before we head out. We'll come back tomorrow. Hopefully you can join us again at some point. For day number 2, who are some names that you expect to still be there when all said and done and the smoke clears at the end of tonight that you think the Jets should be looking at 33 and 44?
Sure. I think in terms of day 2 for the Jets, I mean, you got to start thinking about defensive backs here. I mean, I think I already mentioned Chris Johnson, Colton Hood. Those would be a lot of those guys there. Linebacker wise, in terms of the ones that they like, you might get like a CJ Allen unless he goes at the bottom of the first, which could still happen. Trying to think, Chase Basantis could be there as well, kind of help the interior offensive line. I think a lot of it is just that, again, the defensive backs is really where I think a lot of the value is going to be there. Yeah. There are some tight ends in there, but of course you already took a tight end, so I don't think you would want to double up on that.
Definitely not. For a fourth tight end.
Yeah, no, can't do that.
Wide receiver wise,
that. Oh yeah, they drafted 3 tight ends in the top 50 in the
Yeah. Now, wide receiver wise, what would be fun to me is if they got like a Zachariah Branch at Georgia, right? In terms of kind of sticking with the theme a little bit of what they're trying to do, at least getting kind of athletic players. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I would kind of look at it like that. I think defensive backs and particularly interior offensive line, that's kind of where I think the focus should be after what they've done so far.
It'll be interesting. I mean, listen, as of now, and this could change, we'll stay until the Steelers make this pick because they very well could pick a wide receiver here at 21, and so that'll be interesting. But
also, let me add.
Did the Cowboys move? The Cowboys moved back, or were they? No, they moved back to 20 with the Eagles. Okay, so this is actually the second time that the Cowboys have moved back. Line. You think? Yeah, they could. Yeah, because remember, there's all this talk that Broderick Jones might miss time, and he stinks anyway. So,
yeah. By the way, the picks that they got from Miami were the comp picks in the 5th round.
Yeah. And I'll make a point in a second, right after the Steelers make this pick, and then we'll see what happens. We'll quickly mention some names for tomorrow. And the Steelers have picked. Wow. Okay. Yeah, you're right. They went offensive line. Max I can't pronounce that last name.
Oh,
It's always
Iconic. Dude, this
Iconicore.
guy is
Okay.
going to be a monster.
No. I like him. I just when you watch his tape, you don't hear, especially when you watch all 22, you don't hear announcers say his name. So it's
Yeah,
not
no,
I couldn't pronounce it. But anyway,
I watch enough
so
Arizona State live. Kenny Dillingham is a psychopath. And just anytime, if you watch any college football, if you scrolling and you see Arizona State game on it, I promise you, stop and watch it and
yeah,
just watch the
yeah,
coach. He's
for
a
sure.
psycho, and
Yeah.
it's awesome. It's so much
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, no, I get for sure. But anyway, so looking
According
at
to
what's on
Google,
the
it's
board,
pronounced Ihanachor.
Ihanachor.
Ionichor. Okay. Well, either way, right now, like Jim said, you got Basantis, Pregnon, both still on the board at the moment, at least, and we'll see if they're still there by the end of the night. Cooper and Concepcion and Boston, all three of them still there. At defensive back, you've got Colton Hood sitting there as of now. Again, this could all change by the end of the night. Colton Hood, D'Angelo Pons, Chris Johnson, Emmanuel McNeil Warren, Dylan Thieneman. Linebacker, you've got Jacob Rodriguez, you've got CJ Allen. So there are impactful players all over the place as of this moment. We'll see what the Jets end up doing. Man, to me, this is a deflating. I mean, the last time I remember feeling deflated like this on draft night was probably the Will McDonald pick. I talked myself into not hating it, but I still didn't really like it. That's kind of what I'm going to do with Bailey and Sadiq. I'm hoping for look.
It's hard to do it on
Expect,
a double up, though. It's hard to
oh
talk yourself into two of them. Let me
yeah,
just throw this in about Sadiq. There's not a lot of production to hang your hat on there, but it's
yeah,
not. It's that you can't totally pin that on him because he just wasn't a part of their offense really, which I guess you can say is a problem because like if a guy is you're drafting a guy at 16, you would think he should be a big part of an offense in college. So, but it's one of those things a lot of people when they talked about Mendoza, people tried to ding him for the Indiana runs a lot of RPOs, and it's like, all right, but that's the system that they run. You can't ding him for not doing stuff that he wasn't asked to do. So there's part of me that wants to say that about Sadiq. Like, he wasn't asked to do all this stuff that we're talking about seeing. So, but then there's another part of me that's like, that should just be there. If you're a number 16th overall pick in the draft, we shouldn't have to squint. It should be there for everybody to see, and it just hasn't been, and it's not so far. So that's alarming. And yeah, like I said,
yeah,
it's one thing. It's one thing to have to talk yourself into one pick. Okay, I don't like this pick, but all right, talk myself into it. Now you got to talk yourself into two picks. That's tougher. But yeah, just for tomorrow, especially the 33 right now. DeSantis, I don't like Pregnon as much, but
Nick,
that's another
Nick,
guard. The
Nick's back by the way.
cornerbacks.
Before we go, I want to talk to Nick. I'm glad you came
Yeah.
back, Nick. Nick, thank God you're here.
What
You're
did
going
they
to save the
say?
day.
What
Nick,
nonsense did they try to tell us?
we have not been happy about this. I want to hear because you covered the pressers. Bailey, look, I don't think it was the right pick. I do think he's a good player. I don't think it was the right pick. I've been clear why. I think all of us have. Sadiq was mystifying. Like we said, there's not a lot of production there. He's not a route runner. He's not a very physical guy. You're just banking on the raw athleticism with him. And I don't understand how you take him with a guy like Makai Lemon on the board. I don't understand how you take him with other options on the board that could be much more impactful, I think. So, Nick, your thoughts, but also what did these guys say? What was the explanation?
So we're gonna hear from Darren Muji and Aaron Glenn, I would say, in about 20-ish minutes. So I'll probably come on afterwards and kind of expel that. But the one thing I will say is there's a consistent theme with both picks. It's versatility and speed. The one thing, you don't really feel that way with David Bailey, but when we talked to him, he mentioned the fact that he played multiple different roles, not at Texas Tech, but in Stanford. He was kind of all over the field the way he described it. Listen, I'm not going to tell you if he's right or wrong. This is what
I'm not making the face at you, Nick. It's the
the pieces we're making. The other piece is Sadiq.
Pieces are not meant for you, Nick.
The other piece is Sadiq, and the versatility that he brings. He played every position outside of offensive line, as he said it in the presser. And the interest there is the fact that people need to remember Frank Reich, when he was the offensive coordinator in Philadelphia, they ran 12 personnel to death. It was Brent Selleck, it was Zach Ertz, and they ran it to death. And I think that's what they want to build here with this offense. It's really the only explanation, because you rarely see tight ends go second round and first round. So that's kind of the expectation there. And again, we're gonna find out more about what went into those picks in a little bit. But I think that's where the team was looking at going into this.
Man, but Nick, it's such a tough pill to swallow. You take a tight end twice in the top 50 in 2 straight years, and then also like the problem with Sadiq, and I'm curious if people ask about this, he's not a route runner and he's not a blocker. He's just an athlete who, as you said, he's lined up a bunch of places, but like it doesn't feel like he's found a home anywhere specifically. And he's undersized. He's a move tight end. There's just such a limit to what you could do with him. I mentioned before, I know Daniel Jeremiah is comparing him to Dustin Keller. Who the hell is picking Dustin Keller 16th?
He's the tweener. He's the guy that doesn't have the position. Not Arvell Reese, who has 2. Yeah. He's the guy that doesn't really have a position. He's just a freak athlete.
But I think Nick is right, though, obviously. And Nick, your insight,
that makes a lot of sense.
But being a Philly fan, that makes a lot of sense, and I get it.
Well, I don't. Can we also just acknowledge? I'm very happy with the Jets selection of Kenyon as a fan.
Yeah, I know.
As a fan, very pleased.
I don't understand how you. Well, because I said this too. Like I was like, once they traded up, I'm like, the Eagles are taking Lemon, and now he's going to be really good. And dude, this is the other thing. I think we got to acknowledge.
They did draft. That's the team that drafted Jalen Reagor.
Yeah, but it's a completely different scouting system now.
It's the same. Yeah,
but they also drafted Devontae Smith. So
I'm just saying.
Honestly. But anyway,
not just did he draft Jalen Reagor, Justin Jefferson was still on board.
But I think that's where the correction is. They're looking at Lemon as the correction of the Justin Jefferson. It's who gives a crap if he plays in the slot? Pick him. He's a good player.
Right. Because Justin Jefferson was basically a jumbo slot at LSU, and that was where a lot of teams went wrong in evaluating him. But the thing that's interesting is, like, if Arvell Reese comes anywhere close to hitting his ceiling, they better hope that Bailey is anywhere near as good as they think he is, because if he's not, the Jets will never hear the end of this. And the same thing with Lemon. If Lemon goes to the Eagles, now it won't be as bad because it's not the Giants, but still, if Lemon goes to the Eagles and becomes a productive 1,000-yard type, kind of almost what Devontae Smith has, like, because they're going to trade, we know June 1st, A.J. Brown's getting traded to the Patriots. It seems like that's pretty much a done deal. So when that happens, Smith becomes the number 1, and then Lemon slides into that number 2 slot. If Lemon can become anywhere close to as productive as Smith was as the number 2 in Philly, and Sadiq struggles as this like weird move tight end, I mean, man, that's tough. And like, I don't want to be making conclusions based like, because we all have our thoughts now, but we don't know how this is going to pan out. We know what it looks like on paper. We have our thoughts. We don't know. For all we know, Kenyon Sadiq comes in here and he's Aaron Hernandez minus the murders, right? For all we know. Yeah, I hope
that's but that's also kind of what they're trying to build, right? They're trying to do the Hernandez Gronk situation.
Yeah, but this doesn't make me feel better about the Frank Wright hire, which I had concerns about.
But here's the thing. But Nimbley, I will say, you're talking about an OC that saw a Super Bowl won based out of that personnel specific.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of where you can see that fit work.
I agree.
I gotta go. I gotta jump really quick.
Nick, thank you for jumping in, man. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah. All right, so that's a good place to end it. But I think really he makes a good point. But I will say, I think if it was Hernandez and Gronk, then it's different because Hernandez and Gronk or Hernandez and Gronk.
Right.
Even if it was Brent Selleck, like Brent Selleck wasn't a first or second round pick. I think that's kind of the
He was
thing
solid.
here. What?
Right. Yeah. No, Brent Selleck was
Yeah.
solid, but yeah, you're right. He wasn't a first round pick.
Right. That's what I mean. If Kenyon
Guy
Sadiq was
Lawrence.
a third or fourth, oh wow, I love that pick actually.
Yeah, that's a great pick.
Too bad they don't have DeMarcus Lawrence anymore. That would have been fun. DeMarcus Lawrence and Malachi Lawrence together.
Okay, let me do
brothers.
this. What if we're looking at this wrong, all wrong, and this is actually brilliant genius and number 1 pick next year. And I know he will be wearing different colors, but Mr. Maker. I'm just messing around because first off, I fully expect Mr. Maker to go back to college for the 2027 season. So
well, it depends on how well he
messing
plays.
around on that. But
no, you know what it is, Chris. Chris, I hear you on this for sure. My main thing is that I am so over.
I know, I get it. I get it, but what hope can you have today?
Well, my hope is
they just drafted Kenyon Sadiq.
I know, but my hope is that Sadiq is an exceptional athlete, and maybe what Nick said is what they're thinking, and it works. That's my hope. I'm not optimistic.
Think that's what they're thinking. I don't think it's going to work.
No, I agree with you. I'm just saying that
I know.
Look, I get it. I'm just saying I'm tired of the whole, hey, tank for, like, they're not doing that. And like, look, to be honest with you, I don't really want to see that. I mean, yeah, it would be nice to get Arch Manning or whatever, but like, I don't want to see that. I mean, I don't want to see it.
Yeah, I wasn't being serious with that. Like, that was their plan.
No.
I'm saying, like, at this point, they just drafted Kenyon Sadiq 16th overall.
I think, I don't get it either. But although, to be fair, that is around where he was forecasted, so it's not like it was some huge reach. I just don't like the pick.
It's a huge reach for them.
I mean, it's just not a great pick for them. I think value-wise, it's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but it's also not great, and it's also, like you said, they took Mason Taylor last year. The Browns right now, by the way, have a chance to take Omar Cooper or Casey Concepcion, and I love what one of those two guys could do with Todd Monken.
Me too. Concepcion makes all the sense in the world for me.
Yeah, he'd be a very. Although you could make the case that Denzel Boston could be like the Mike Evans of that offense for him. So, they could go with any of these.
Big body to just chuck it to on the boundary, I'd be with it. But I would think Monken would want the speed and the field stretching at Concepcion.
Well, and also Concepcion, and Cooper too. They're both toys. You can do a bunch of different cool shit with them, gadgety stuff. So in addition to everything, but yeah, no, I mean, we'll see. We'll stay on and finish. We'll see what Monken does because I am. If you look at my Twitter bio, the president of the Todd Monken fan club. That's
I don't need to see his Twitter bio to know that about you.
Yeah. Love me some Monken. So I love, dude.
I know about your Monken, like you know about how I love and fall in love with tight ends every end of the college regular season. Every year it happens. Every year I am in love with a tight end at the end of a college season. But by the time the draft comes around, I usually talk myself out of it. And that's even a Brock Bowers. I even talk myself out of it. I talk myself out of Sadiq like a week after the combine. Like, I did this so long ago.
Yeah, oh my God, dude. I can't tell you how many people are texting me now. Fire everybody 2027. So I just, man.
I'm on board with it. I can't fend those people off anymore.
Look,
the stick I was beating them back with is broken. It's shattered. I got nothing.
I know. I can't. Here's my thing.
I get it. I'm not
Bailey,
saying you have to get on board with it,
no,
but I
mean,
can't push back.
listen. I'm with you. I don't like what they did, but I also don't think it like my thing is this. The two players they got could be very good. So let's see if they are. If they're not, then this is gonna look, let's be honest. If Bailey isn't what they think, and if Sadiq isn't what they think, everyone's probably out of here and whatever. But like I think you're
I
right
think
with the
they're
Muji thing. So many people put a lot of eggs in the Muji basket that are now like, why did we trust this guy? What did he ever really do? That's what they're gonna say. Now, let's see what happens here. Because like, look, if Kenyon Sadiq comes in here and he's a difference maker on offense, and if Bailey comes in here and has 10 sacks as a rookie, then we're wrong. But I mean, I right, I'm with you though. I think it's more likely than not that they're going to be wrong. But and here's the pick for the Browns. Yeah, Concepcion. That's such a Todd Monken pick. I love that. Love that. So, all right, we'll end it there, guys. We'll come back tomorrow for the second round. We'll stick through till the Jets are done picking. Jim, thanks for coming on, man. Michael, thanks for running everything and for jumping in with the cap stuff.
Thank
And
you.
Chris, as always, you are the very biggest of big deals. We'll catch you all tomorrow. Thank you to everybody for hopping in, and we'll catch you tomorrow night.